and welcome to the Hotkeys podcast. This is the show where we talk about everything pop culture and random in the world. I'm your host, Mick, and I'm joined by
Wil Dobratz,
Landon Browning,
and David Parker.
Welcome, guys. It is, I don't know the date. Hold on.
July
It's
18th.
July 18th, 2020. And I drank a lot of coffee, so I'm got stuff in my
So
throat.
bathroom break halfway through the podcast is
That
what
too,
you're saying?
yes. Prepare for an intermission.
Does coffee really affect you guys that much? Because it really
Yes.
affects me very quickly.
I take like 3 sips, and I'm like, oh.
what?
Yeah,
What was that?
I gotta
Yeah.
go.
Coffee
Okay.
for me is an extreme diuretic, and if I'm having issue, then all I need to do is 6 ounces back, and I'm ready to go in 20 to 30 minutes.
Like I feel like the people that drink coffee right before they go on a huge flight, like they're insane.
Oh yeah, I don't know why anyone would have coffee on a.
Or like on a before a
plane.
road trip or something. It's like, oh my gosh, you're just asking for disaster.
I could never get into coffee. I don't like coffee.
It's a great beverage.
Apparently,
I love
alcohol
coffee,
is
but,
good on a plane though, because since the elevation is so high, it affects you so much more. So you need not as much of it.
Hey, cool.
Landon's like, ooh.
So you're saying if it's the other way around, you want to go on a submarine?
Yeah, you need 6 shots.
get drunk.
I've gone through a 24 pack by myself. This is awesome.
So that's what we're talking about this week, right? Coffee and alcohol
Yeah, and flights and
That's our
submarine
coffee
trips.
Spoilercast.
and pooping.
Coffee and sweet alcohol. Is that our
Yeah.
podcast name?
So what else is a good diuretic, Dave? What works for you?
Chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When I think about that, I think the double chocolate chunk muffins from Costco.
Oh,
That's what I
no.
think.
Oh
Like,
no!
man, that
Well,
would
that's
really
the fiber
stop
too.
that.
You know, that's probably the
Just imagine what happens when you
Combination.
combine coffee and chocolate.
and
That's
the muffin.
Oh yeah, well a lot of times I'm gonna have that muffin with my
Muffin.
coffee.
A chocolate muffin flavored coffee.
Yeah, you got to eat that just right outside the bathroom door.
Yeah,
That's the 1, 2, 3 jab. Like, that's the knockout punch right
bombs
there.
away.
Left cross, right cross, uppercut.
Oh gosh. Well, now I need to go to the bathroom.
So, what are we really talking about, Michael?
We're really talking about donuts and tea today.
I really like some types of tea, but donuts hit or miss.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm not a big fan of tea. I'm not a big fan of tea, but I've been watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, and was it the Uncle Iroh? He always drinks tea, and it seems really calming. So I could see myself getting into it if it's like a calming agent or something. Because I got a stressful life, and I need to calm down every once in a while. Anything that helps me out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely have it at a fancy dinner. Like, that's the one thing that,
Yeah,
I'd probably
tea at
drink.
fancy
Oh,
dinner.
for sure. It makes
When
me
do
feel
you-
like royalty.
When you go, what? When
Yeah, would
go
you
out
have
to
it after a fancy dinner, like tea time,
Maybe. Oh, maybe.
3 p.m. or
I don't
something?
know. I just all I'm
Wait,
saying is I'm
3
willing
p.m.
to try.
after dinner?
Well, yeah, because the time difference in
Yeah.
in
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of
Universal time.
Time, yes. Relative.
Universal clock. Universal
No.
clock.
Time?
Dave thinks it's a great idea.
He did come up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Dave,
wanna
it was
talk
really weird.
about
Dave was really
universal
advocating
time.
for putting everybody on the same clock, no matter what location you are.
It
in the
makes
world.
sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
So
figure it out
stupid.
yourself.
You guys are stupid.
I mean, it's just changing a number.
Maybe you just don't get it.
Speaking of not getting things,
All right. So for this episode, we are going to spoiler cast a video game called The Last of Us Part 2 by Naughty Dog, directed by Neil Druckmann.
Drunk man.
Dunkman, Duckman, Neil Duckman.
He was one of the directors on Uncharted 4.
Yep. Yeah, and Last of Us Part
he's
1.
the vice president of the studio, I think.
Yep, he got promoted after Uncharted 4, I think.
That makes sense. I just went through all the Uncharted games. Really quick, I'll give my order of those games. It's basically my least favorite is 1, and then it just goes down the list to favorite.
4 is so good. Like,
4 is just on a whole nother level. I don't know if
I think
have we all played it?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I like the
Yeah.
story in 4. I love the brother relationship between the two brothers.
Well, it reminded me a lot of like the Last Crusade thing with the father son. Like I love that like family
Mm-hmm.
kind of family chemistry that can have done and
Because
Yeah,
you're The real chemistry you have in real life is lacking with your brother. So
Exactly.
You gotta find it in other places.
I need adventure.
All right, brother relationship for real.
Yeah, the fourth one's so good too because like you progressed with the characters for 3 games, and you're like,
Right.
I mean, the game's a little bit darker, maybe. I would say
so,
tone's
yeah.
a little bit more.
You can
because
turn
a
that
lot
up in the settings, Landon. The gamma. You can turn that up.
Oh, okay. I had us all laughing. Another winner.
I thought it was pretty funny. So should I turn the gamma all the way
as
up
in
on Last of Us
gamma.
Part 2? Like,
It's still dark. Yeah, Naughty Dog's such a good developer, developer, right? Yeah, game developer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Studio.
they're pretty good.
Studio. Yeah, they're probably my favorite. I think them and Rockstar.
They're pretty good.
So. All right, so they made
Great. They are great.
So The Last of Us Part 2 is the project they worked on after Uncharted 4. It came out about a month ago.
Yeah,
around there.
I think so.
I think exactly a month ago.
Exactly.
No, it was a day tomorrow will be exactly.
Okay,
It
let's
came out
stop.
June 19th.
Right now, and let's continue the podcast tomorrow because that would be so poetic.
Yeah, the game came out. We all beat it.
Wait, Dave got it?
Yeah, Dave ended up getting it.
What?
Yeah, congrats, Dave. I'm really proud of you. I think we're all really proud of you that you went out and spent $60 on a video game.
I still, there's got to be something that happened where he got it like at a discount or he stole it.
He probably spent rewards points or something like that. Like he spent his rewards points somewhere.
No, I
Like,
just
was it
bought the
Dave?
game like a normal person because I gave in to my friends. I gave
But
in to
you're
peer
not a
pressure.
normal person. Are you?
I don't think
I try to be.
You
Try to pretend to be a real
Put a
person.
mask on. You could put a mask on, pretend to be normal.
It's working.
nobody cared about who Dave was until he put on the mask.
We all beat the game pretty quickly, I feel like, too, once we got it. I mean,
I think I beat it in like a week.
yeah, so 8 days, I think, is what I beat.
4 days.
8 days.
I started it Thursday night and beat it Monday. Like
Oh
a
my
Thursday night.
goodness.
That's a long.
That game's not short, so
No,
Yeah. How long did it take you guys to beat it, hour-wise?
I didn't look, but it
I think
felt
mine was
like-
28 or 29, something like that.
I was probably close to that.
I think it was 26.
I was 25 hours.
So pretty tight. I mean, we all have pretty relatively close run times.
Mhm.
Upper 20s, basically.
It is a long game for a non-open world, like a linear
Yeah.
third-person action game. The story is quite long.
I think with this game and then the first game, this is where my OCD sets in. Like I feel like I have to look at every single nook and cranny.
Yep.
And on each part of the map, and I think that's something that makes my gameplay a little bit longer.
Yeah, and then
Well-
you like look at how many stuff you still missed.
Right. It's like, how is that possible?
Well, this
How did I
game
miss
too.
43 quarters or
Yeah.
Well, this game too. They do like the Return of the King thing where they keep fading to black, and then you have like
Oh my
4 or
God.
5
here we
endings,
go.
and you're not sure when the game is going to be over. You're like, is it done now? Like, I guess I could see the game ending at this point, and you're like, okay, there's
Except
another
the end of the Return of the
cutscene,
King
and
was magical and so heartwarming. I can't say the same for this.
oh, so what were your impressions of the game then, Mick? First impressions.
Spoiler warning, everybody. Like we're gonna
Yeah,
maybe
spoiler
keep
warning.
it light spoilers for now, but at any moment
pretty much,
the floodgates
yeah.
could open. Like you should just play the game. I think we would all recommend that you play the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely play the game.
But when Ellie chokes the life out of Joel, I mean I did not see that one coming.
It's sick, dude. I was throwing up at home.
Don't make me cry this
Joel.
early.
Yeah, we just started, guys. Come on. Okay, so my overall impression of the game, I enjoyed playing it. I think you should play it, especially if you played the first one. There are like halfway through the story, it started losing me.
What happens halfway through the story?
And then it just kind of, to me, it kind of petered out like a just slow dying dog. And I just kind of was like,
Speaking of dying dogs,
you do kill dogs in the game, which I feel like that's pretty common in video games, right?
oh
Like,
yeah, it's really common.
there's a lot of dog killing in video
Yeah,
games.
killed
for
probably,
some reason,
100
there's been a
dogs.
lot of people talking about that in this game. I don't know if it's because they're more realistic or something, but it's like it's not anything that's new. And you kill so many people in the
Yeah.
game.
But
It-
Dave,
it
dogs, like,
it baffles me that people are like, oh, the the dogs. I tried not killing the dogs, but I was fine with slaughtering.
Especially when the dog wants to eat your face.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dog
when it's
wants to
when it's
tear
like
you
going
apart.
straight for your jugular.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
like,
like, it's like I'll kill a dog like without hesitation, like like if it's attacking me. But like a human, like I'm gonna obviously like feel terrible about it. Like that's just me though. Like
I mean, I would still feel terrible about killing a dog, but I mean, if it's life
I
or
would
death.
too. I
Life
would
or
too.
death.
But I'm just saying it doesn't even compare to killing a human.
Well, no,
Yeah.
and I don't think it should.
Exactly. I don't think it should either. Anyway, sorry.
I mean, the dogs are terrors. You have the one character who is like later in the game sees the dog and is trying
Sorry,
to be like,
is this my overview or your overview?
no, I'm just talking about the dog, about how like how
Yeah,
they're
Dave.
scared of the dog and
Why don't
the
you
other
wait
characters like trying
didn't
to
we all
talk them
agree?
in.
Not
Didn't we
cutting
all
each other.
agree?
Immediately,
Did we
Dave's like,
all
I
agree?
gotta say something.
Did we all agree to give everybody a time to just talk about their feelings of the game?
No,
without,
we
like,
didn't, Will.
Landon
We didn't
screaming
agree to that. No one
like-
agreed to that.
But see, when Dave's in charge, he can do whatever he wants.
Oh, right, because he
I'm not in
controls
charge.
everything.
I forgot about
Mick's
that.
in charge.
Shoot. Forgot about that rule. Go ahead, Dave.
This is like the end of Endgame. Yes, sure you are. I'm in charge. I'm Captain now. So yeah, the game kind of petered for me, and I wasn't a huge fan of how it ended. That being said, the gameplay was great. It was really enjoyable to actually play the mechanics of the game. It felt really good, especially if you like stealth type games and over the shoulder shooting. I really liked that. Visually, the game was just really pretty. You know, it was just really pleasing to look at. I'm also kind of a nerd too when it comes to this because part of the game takes place in Seattle, and the places you go are actually fairly accurate to real life. So when I was at like a certain building, I was like looking at the street names and I was like Google mapping, like, oh, does it match up pretty well?
I did the
And
same thing.
and it actually matched up fairly well for a video game. I did the same thing for Spider-Man PS4.
Nice.
Anyway, so I was like, oh, that building, oh, it's there. Oh, that's so cool.
Did you do the same thing for Divinity, or not Divinity 2? For what's the
What?
game where you're in DC?
The Division 2.
Did you do the same thing for the Division 2?
No,
in
I'm pretty
DC?
sure I snapped that disc in half and hated myself ever since for buying it.
Game was stupid.
I bought it. It was like $3.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't it the $3?
Worst $3 I've ever spent.
Michael snapped his hard drive in half.
Anyway, so there are a lot of things I liked about the game. Story-wise and character choice-wise, I have issues. But I would say it's definitely a game worth playing.
Thank you, Michael.
Next. Dave, just go. I know you want to say something.
Oh,
Go.
No,
What's your-
my first impressions are. I mean, it was a fun game. It was way longer than I was expecting it to be. It was way longer. Than I was
Dave, where'd you go?
Dave died. What happened? Dave?
Oh, God, Dave.
Oh, God.
For those listening, my
Dave, hello?
webcam went flying,
Oh my gosh.
and it looked like to everyone else on the other end that there was an
I think
earthquake
Dave's
over here.
building just exploded.
It's like
I was
one
trying
of
to
those, like,
swat.
horror
I was trying to
movies
swat a
with
gnat
horror-
out of the air, but I hit the cord to my webcam, and it went flying across my desk. No, my first impressions aren't that deep. I would say that the game was fun to play. It's kind of similar to Michael's, I guess, where I enjoyed playing the game. It was a lot longer than I was expecting. I thought the story was fairly interesting. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was a fun game, I guess.
Wow.
Really?
It was a game.
Such a
If you
neutral.
could get like impressions by liquids, that would be water. Like I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I'll go
Like,
into
those
I'll
basic-
go into it more when I read my review. So
Okay, I'm just gonna say right now that was really like I was
Okay,
just like the
Landon,
most standard
what do
you
you
can get.
It's a masterpiece. It's a 10 out. I love the game. Like I like playing like that kind or The Last of Us Part 2, like it's everything I want in a video game. Like the way the game plays. Like Mick was saying, the gameplay is really good. It's super smooth. It's miles ahead of where the first Last of Us was at as far as like the movement and the shooting and just the exploratory, like the environments seem a lot more explorable, more vertical.
Yes, very.
I would say the puzzles in the game, like the traversing puzzles, are a lot more varied. It's not as much of just like, oh, drag this raft or this pallet for Ellie to hop on,
Jump on the
like,
pallet.
or oh, here's this conveniently placed ladder or dumpster that I can push. So I thought those kind of environmental puzzles that push you through the story were way more engaging. The environmental storytelling I really liked, all the notes and stuff. The world felt like extremely lived in.
Yes.
So that the non-combat and combat gameplay I thought was exceptional. Upgrade systems and everything were, it was just enough to be engaging, but not in your face. I mean, the amount of time you spend in menus, very minimal. I mean, you don't kind of get out of the action hardly at all. And I'm in a different camp than Mick, and I know Will is, that I thought the story was exceptional. I haven't been this engaged with the story, or like kind of like caught up in, or like the time away from the game when I wasn't playing it, I was thinking about it probably since Red Dead Redemption 2. It's kept me the most engaged since that. And then before that, probably The Last of Us Part 1. So I thought all the characters were really good, and I was actually pretty happy with, I thought the ending of the game and all the beats along the way were satisfactory for me. So
cool.
It's a masterpiece.
Thank you, Landon. Thank you.
All right, Will, tell him how he's wrong.
Oh boy. So my first impressions, I want to say positive things first, because I'm going to say up front that my experience was overall kind of more negative than Landon's. But the most positive things is that the gameplay is really well crafted for its genre. It has, like, it probably does the best like action stealth mix like that I've played in recent years. Maybe like a little below a level of Metal Gear Solid 5, but like that's still like really good level. It has some pretty the visuals and the sounds of the game are absolutely out of this world. The music is one of my, like, the first one was already one of my favorite soundtracks ever, and the second one like is on the same level. Like, I love the score of The Last of Us, and I love the score of The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah. I have the soundtrack still installed on my PS4 because it's like I got it with the digital deluxe edition, and like I've listened to it before, and it's absolutely fantastic. And then the presentation again, from the first game, the way that like I guess the best way to describe it is the cinematography of the game is really well executed. The game, it feels like every angle the camera sets, it's so great. And oh crud, hold on a sec. Yes. And then the acting is the last one positive I want to say. The acting is probably some of the best acting I've seen in the game ever, and possibly like the most well acted game ever, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And it's not just the voice acting, but the facial animations,
the performance,
even
like
when it's not like in a cutscene, like the facial animations, like when you take down somebody as Ellie, you can like see the detail on her face, that she's like, you can see the anger and the kind of the stress that she's in, and like just from like just gameplay.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
Like every time I would take down someone, I would move the camera around just to see her face.
Oh, like when you're choking someone out and she's making like,
right, yeah, she's like, and you can like see that on her face. Like, I haven't seen that amount of detail like that before in a video game, and I think that's really cool.
And like one of the characters, voice actresses, is getting death threats on like death threats because of just how the plot goes, and we'll get into it more later. But her performance is incredible. I really liked. I think she was probably like one of my favorite performances in the game. She was probably one of my least favorite characters, but I think the way that she acted her character was really well done.
Yeah, I don't think she was great. I can't think of anybody that did a bad job.
Yeah.
Their characters.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're all great.
Even though I didn't find the infected that believable. I had some issues with some of the motivations.
The infected in the game were terrifying.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They were creepy, and
there was actually certain. Sorry to cut you off, Mick, but there were some portions in the game that I was wondering. I was like, how?
Podcast anyway.
There are certain portions of the game that I was wondering, how is Michael playing this game? Because Michael is a scaredy cat and doesn't like
this,
getting scared. And there are portions that like I had a couple times where like I jumped in certain parts of the game.
There are a couple like jump scares. It got me.
Yeah.
I never played the game with the lights off.
I played the whole game with the lights.
I like playing with the lights off. It's more scary. More scary.
Yeah.
Dude, the only thing that could make the fear go away was like having like 6 shotgun shells. Like that was the only thing.
When you're like loaded up on it.
Yeah, like
you're
when that shot he's fully loaded, I'm
comes
like,
my
I'm
way,
good.
I'm just gonna blow it away. Like
I had to play it in a bouncing castle to keep me like.
You're constantly bouncing, like reminding yourself of happier times.
Yeah, childhood. Shoot them in the
Make
face.
sure sunlight was streaming into your room so that you knew you were safe.
Yeah, there's some awesome like chase sequences, like when like there's just too many to fight, you know, and you're just running.
There was a point where I was like, I think the game wants me to run away because I'm getting overwhelmed here, and I don't know. Like, so I think that was.
I ran from a lot of encounters, and I snuck through a lot of encounters.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to finish my thoughts really quick. So this is just one more thing. So with all the positives being said about the presentation, I think that the story's pretty drags down the game because I wasn't a huge fan of the story. I thought it was pretty mediocre. It's probably one of the most brave stories in a long time. It's probably one of the most. It takes the most risks. But for me, they never paid off. And because it's interesting, because the game, a non-spoiler, the game is about Abby. Not Abby. Ellie. So the game.
You just said not spoiler.
Sorry, I misspoke. The game is about a lot about Abby, and even. God dang it. The game is about Ellie. Shoot! Oh my gosh.
Dave, cut that.
So Ellie is a compelling character
running.
to me. Ellie is a super compelling character, and one that I care a lot about from the first game. Yet, despite this, I was never too fond of the game for a lot of reasons that I'll go into in more depth. The pacing and the plot of the game makes sure that I didn't fully enjoy my experience.
Peter. Just had to get that out real quick. Yeah.
It's okay.
All right,
You're just a fanboy. We all know it.
So we'd all give the game a 10, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'd say
Only because Naughty Dog paid me.
for me, it bounces back and forth between like a 7, 6.5, 7.5, like basically 7, depending on the day.
Yeah, I would say probably around there, maybe a low 7.
I agree.
I'd say like 7.5, 8.
Haters. Y'all a bunch of haters.
How is that a hater? And I think we made this joke last week that's like an IGNF or whatever. But
Yeah, you know.
All right, so now what? We're done.
It's time for golf.
Dave, I think you have something.
Okay, so if we want to start getting into more discussion, like more in-depth discussion, I actually wrote a review for the game. It's 1 page.
Dave's
Grab your blankets and your pillows, everyone.
Grab your pitchforks and knives.
It's more of a critique on narratives in video games than it is a review of the game, but I think it'll give us some good stuff to talk about. So I'm going to read my review. The Last of Us Part 2 is a survival horror game that makes the player do things you don't want to do, making decisions you would not have made. Those decisions make the player feel detached from the characters, so you become less involved and invested in their stories. For a game like this, where decisions made by the characters are more polarizing than most, and many of these decisions are not universally accepted as the correct option, the game may as well have been a movie. The thing that separates video games from other mediums is that we become characters. We control them, we make decisions, we are those characters. The longer I've played games, the more I've grown to appreciate the ones that embrace the control you have over a character's choices, like in an RPG. Forcing your characters to do something you don't want to do, whether in actual gameplay or in a cutscene, is jarring. That's why movies, TV shows, books, and plays work so well at telling others' stories, because we don't have the same sort of bond with those characters since we don't actually control anything they do. I recognize that my issues aren't actually that specific to the game itself, but more towards narrative video games in general. If I'm going to invest myself in a character I control, I want to either A, have as much autonomy over the decisions my characters make, or B, fully accept the decisions made for me by the characters when I have no control over them. For games with lighter stories, I'm usually fine with B. I'm not spending a lot of time disagreeing with the decisions that Link, the Doomslayer, or Ratchet make in a cutscene. The decisions that they make are never too heavy or important, nor immersion breaking. For a game like The Last of Us 2, I hold it to a higher standard. Decisions are highly controversial and have much more weight. It's a dark, mature game that wants you to think and feel engaged in the plot. This is why I think the first game tackles the complexities of storytelling a little bit better. In the first game, Joel makes the decision at the very end to save Ellie. And why wouldn't we agree with that decision? We controlled Elle, we controlled Joel, when his actual daughter died. We traveled with Ellie across the U.S. to bring her to the Fireflies, safeguarding her along the way. We grew with her, eventually embracing her as a surrogate daughter. Last week on the podcast, we talked a little bit about this, and without hesitation, we all said we would have done the same thing to save her. This was a decision the game made for us, but it was one I would have made had there been an option, save for killing the surgeons, which that was immersion breaking for me. It kind of took me out of the moment, and we talked about that as well last week. I tried to avoid killing them, looking for a non-lethal approach to save Ellie, but the game would not let me do that. And of course, now we know why those killings were extremely lasting, had lasting consequences, spawning the whole reason for this sequel. The first game also does something interesting at the very end, where we switch to playing Ellie after she's rescued, experiencing Joel's lie through her eyes, knowing that he's lying from a meta standpoint since we're the player, but not knowing since Joel doesn't actually share the truth. At this point, we didn't make the controversial decision to lie because we are no longer Joel. We are playing as Ellie. If we had continued to play as Joel, that ending would have had a different effect. It would not have been the same. That's the right way, I think, to influence narrative in a video game by who you control. The second game tried to do this by having the player control Abby at various points. But there were too many decisions that did not sit right with me. They wouldn't be the decisions I would have made. So there was a real disconnect that was present.
From from Abby's point of view?
Dave's still reading.
Hold on.
I was confused, but
So all of that being said, I enjoyed playing the game. The gameplay was fun. The story was still interesting. And since I can recognize the pitfalls of telling a complicated story in the medium of a video game, I know how to appreciate it, taking note of everything I've mentioned. But unless I would have made all of the same decisions that the characters made, there will always be an element of detachment present, more so in this game than in pretty much any other game I've ever played, since the story is so heavy and the choices you as a player did not have control over have such lasting consequences.
hater.
All right, Dave doesn't get to talk for the rest of the podcast.
That was very well written, Dave.
Yes, Dave.
Very well
I
written.
wish I could write that kind of stuff.
You know how
Why haven't you written a book yet?
I just want to throw out a horrifying thing though. Imagine if this game was like an Until Dawn kind of thing, where you had to make some of the choices.
I think I like.
Dude, you really want to have the weight on you, dude. When bad things start happening, then you're like, I made this.
Well, I think
That's fair,
that's
but
one thing I really love about the Telltale games, especially, is you get to choose.
Those don't really there's really no lasting.
But I mean, what I'm saying is you have more control over the character than you do in Last of Us 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In terms of how to treat a certain person, or
think the Wolf
because
Among
there are
Us.
some.
If you've played The Wolf Among Us, then that's actually it's one of the only Telltale games I've played, and probably I couldn't and I've seen other parts of other Telltale games, and I'm not interested in them too much.
What? Hater.
Wrong.
But Wolf Among Us really struck a tone with me, with its narrative, with its storytelling, with its what's it called? It's crud. Atmosphere. It's setting. There you go. Setting. So what it's actually about. It really struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Bumble my way there. But
I would have helped you, but I had no idea what you were
I
going
think
for.
some of the tough there are tough decisions in that game at point. It's not on the level of Last of Us Part 2, but it allowed me to really think, okay, if I was Big B, what would I do? Because I feel like the game does a good job of there are all choices within his character. Yet at the same time, I could choose where his character kind of goes. And I think that's also where kind of Red Dead has an edge as well, Red Dead Redemption 2. Even though it's a way more of a streamlined experience, and there's a lot more. It's following a plot that's
More
that
linear.
you can't really branch off of as well.
You can't.
There's aspects of the main character Arthur's character that you can control.
Mm-hmm.
You can control things throughout the game based on your different actions that you take. You build this almost moral meter, and it
The honor, I think, is what it's called, right? You're
honor,
either
yes.
have high honor
Thank you.
or low honor or something.
And that high honor or low honor, which is reflective of your choices in various situations, affect how some of the game's ending plays out. And I think that's a strength of video games. And I know Last of Us Part 2 is trying to do something different and it's telling more of a cinematic on a story. But I actually, Dave, I would agree with you in that I felt detached from the characters. I think that was one of my biggest issues with playing this game is I felt like in the first one, I could really sympathize with Joel, and I could be in Joel's shoes easier. I can't really see myself in Ellie or Abby's shoes because of the choices that they make, which I think that's a great kind of analysis, Dave, and I would support that.
Landon, rebuttal.
I could get that. So like you would have preferred it. So you just don't like games that have like the characters make choices that you don't agree with. Like,
I mean, not really. No, like I'm playing a game to control somebody, not to like passively take part in something that I don't have control over. That's why I'm playing a game, and that's why I like RPGs a lot, because you get to make those decisions. And kind of like what I was saying, like in the lighter games, where either the decisions aren't as important, or it's like an easy decision. Like, yes, I would have made that decision. That's what I would have done. I can kind of give that a pass, even though I didn't make the decision. But when it's something
like in an Uncharted game or something.
Yeah, like in an Uncharted game. I mean, that one too
because
is like.
I would say majority of the video games, you don't make the choices.
Yeah, I'd say majority.
Yeah, I mean, and those are the games that either I'm playing for fun, because like I think we've had this conversation before, especially Landon and I have kind of said this, is that like if I want like a really great story, I'm probably not going to go to a video game. I'm going to go to something else. I'm going to go to I'm going to experience a movie, or I'm going to experience a series, a TV series, or I'm going to read a book or something. Like most of my enjoyment that comes from video games is from the actual playing of it. And this game, the story is so heavy, and like there's such important consequences about decisions that if there are decisions that don't really line up with what you would have done, there's like a clear disconnect, which kind of takes you out of the moment, and it's hard to be as engaged in that, I guess.
I guess I just didn't experience that. Like I was still just experiencing like I'm playing Ellie. I'm not playing myself. Like I'm making choices. Like
well, yeah, but like if I was Ellie, there was a lot of the things that I would not have done, or that the decisions I wouldn't have made. And there
would you have killed the person with the PS Vita?
No, I would not have.
I'm just kidding.
There was a lot of people in the game I would not have killed, and there's a lot of people that I would have killed if I had the chance.
It was interesting because I want to highlight our kind of difference of it, especially me and Landon's had a very different kind of baseline experience that I think can contribute to different viewpoints. So something that Landon texted, there's an event in the first 2 hours of the game. I don't know if we just go ahead and spoil it.
Spoilers.
I mean,
Okay,
we're full spoilers here.
It's a Joel.
Joel gets brutally murdered within the first 2 hours of the game. So, and I was initially kind of off-put and didn't like that decision because the first one was so special to me because of Joel and Ellie's relationship. And knowing that we're not going to get a similar thing to that in this game was kind of disappointing to me, but I tried to continue with an open mind and to like, okay, this could still be good. This could still go somewhere good, because obviously the first 2 hours of the game don't dictate the next 25 hours. It's a 25-hour game basically. So, or at least I was the one that spent the least amount of time playing it. And
get it. You're the best out of all of us, Will.
No. I also probably got the least amount of collectibles. So, and when the game kind of draws out feelings from you in different kind of ways, and they do that through Joel's death. They do that through with Joel's death. I was more sad than anything, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go watch Ellie on a journey to go massacre them all. All right, I guess I'm going to go watch Ellie do that. And then Landon's reaction was much different. Landon was super mad. Landon said, literally texted me, I'm going to kill every last one of them. And that, I think, sums up.
Quote too from the trailer. Ellie says that one of the trailers.
Yeah, it's the very first trailer. And
I think John Wick says that too.
Yeah, it's a good line.
Kill them all.
And it's kind of.
But Will wouldn't know that.
I wouldn't know because I haven't seen the movies. Even though I've been borrowing them for 4 months from Michael, I've never once put that disc in my PS4. Anyways, as I was saying, the differences between experiences really make or break the game. Landon's experienced everything the game wanted him to feel. I fully 100% believe that.
Clicked for me. I didn't get sad about Joel's death till like the next day. It was like the next day I was like driving my parents home from dinner. Like I took them out to dinner.
Out crying.
No, I was like I almost started choking up. Like I'm like driving home. We were just like listening to some music, chatting, and I was like, oh, I'm like Joel's dead. I'm like no, I'm like Dad, no,
I'll find you.
Gosh dang.
I mean, I think they do a good job with at least, you feeling certain kind of things. I think that's more of a testament to the characters from the first game, though, that the loss of this character is something that hits you hard. I mean, I think I told you guys that
it hit me hard too.
Like that night, like when I played that level, and then after he died, like that night after I went to bed, like I had a dream that he didn't die.
Oh yeah,
and that he was still alive, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, like Joel's still alive. Like, yeah, that's great. Like I didn't want him to die, and then I woke up and I was like, oh, okay, well I guess he's actually
Fall back asleep.
he's actually dead.
I literally couldn't sleep because of the direction the game was going. I would stay up laying awake for hours because I couldn't.
Yeah, that makes me really sad, dude. Like,
thinking about it, and
I didn't lose any sleep.
Yeah, no. I could not sleep for the days that I was playing it. The 4 or 5 days, I did not get a lot of sleep. So, and it's a very impactful game, and it's a very discussion-worthy game.
Why don't we have a podcast about it?
Yeah, it's crazy. We should do a full spoiler cast for it. And sorry, I'm talking a lot. I apologize. But
well, I don't know if you know how podcasts work, but you have to talk a lot, so you're totally fine.
Sweet, awesome. I'll continue to talk to the entire time then. But there's also, that is one instance of how me and Landon perceived a same event differently.
So you were like, oh, I don't want to go.
Like, I don't know. I was just, I felt like I didn't really know what to do because I was still processing like what actually just happened.
And then Landon was like, I'm gonna kill all of them.
Yeah. And I was remembering all their faces.
I'm more in Landon's camp where I was like, I'm gonna get all of them.
See, I have a question. So like she gets this information, she sees the jackets and like has like Washington Liberation Front or Force or whatever. She's like, gotta go to Seattle and kill him. Like what if it was like Washington DC? Like she goes to Seattle and she's like, where's the WLF? And then they're like, no, this wrong Washington. You're like, you're in the wrong spot.
God darn it.
And the twist is that you spend all this time killing all these people, but you don't recognize any of them. And you're like, wow, I must be doing a great job, right?
Where's Abby? Where's Abby?
Her name's Gabby.
She's like really skinny and like short and weak. She has two pigtails.
Where is their camp? Are they in Wyoming or?
Yeah, Jackson, Wyoming. Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They're like near the Tetons, I think, right? Grand Tetons. Man, I would love to live there. Like if I could live in Wyoming or somewhere where there's big mountains, Montana, Washington. Because I'm in Michigan right now. And this has nothing to do with the show, but playing the game.
You won't go to Michigan in the game.
Playing any game that has mountains or beautiful scenery, especially with mountains and stuff, it makes me like bummed about living here because Michigan is really flat. There's a lot of trees, which is nice, but it's super flat and really boring.
Just move back.
No mountains, and I miss mountains.
Move back.
Why don't you move back to Spokane?
I just want to go back to mountains.
Move back
someday.
Just move back.
Anyways, we're gonna. We should probably move past this.
David, please.
So, okay. If none of you wants to say, I have more things to say, but
keep going.
Okay.
All right, never mind.
No. I want other people to get a chance to talk.
Okay, so I guess I'll chime in a little bit. I'll pull up my notes here. Okay, so I think the main theme of the game was perspective and kind of making you see it from another person's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Obi-Wan from a certain point of view. That type
Jedi are evil.
Basically, Obi-Wan lied.
From my point of view, Joel is evil.
Gosh, what a
man! They should have put that in the game, right? What a missed opportunity. So the whole thing was about perspective because you play as Abby, and you go through flashbacks with her, with finding out that her dad was the one that was the surgeon that was going to perform the surgery on Ellie. Joel comes in, kills him.
Blam blam.
If only we could have saved him.
To me,
The secret
it just to me, if they were going to go with the perspective thing, in my opinion, it completely went out the window when they showed you that Abby killed Joel first. I think that they should have had a whole game before. If I don't really know what the story would be, but like living through those moments that were flashbacks in this game, and you slowly find out that Abby's dad was the surgeon or whatever. But in my opinion, the fact that you play as Abby after you know that she killed Joel, it's an uphill battle the whole way to try to see from her point of view about why she's justified in killing Joel.
Can I chime in on something?
No, I was gonna chime in.
Oh, okay. You can go, Landon.
I was gonna say, like, I get that from a point of like you want to like Abby from the get go, but I don't think it would work with what the story was trying to do. Like, I don't think it works. Like, the game doesn't want you to like Abby at first, and I think the fact that
that's what I'm saying.
I know.
I know it doesn't. To me, it didn't work when it's trying to make you like her throughout the rest of the game and see from her point of view. It just didn't work for me. But because in the whole game, I was like, she killed Joel. I hate her. I don't feel sorry for her. I don't feel like. It just didn't work for me. To me, it would have worked better if there was a game before this where you play as her and you get connected with her, and then in the third game, you find out that like let's say in the second game you go on an adventure with Ellie or something, and it's hinted at that Abby's looking for someone, and it's never really found out, and then it comes up that Ellie knows Joel, and then she's like, "That's the Joel," and then you're like, "Why is Abby so mad at Joel?" And then it comes out that she was the daughter of the surgeon or whatever. And then boom, into the third game. Like, to me, that would be better because you build an organic tie or relationship with Abby instead of, here's Abby, she kills Joel. Now I'm going to show you why you should like Abby. It just didn't work for me. Jumping to like what I thought was the end of the game, when you end up playing as Abby and you come into contact with Ellie finally, and there's like this weird boss fight with
that was hard to play.
Ellie and Abby. It was like, really I'll be honest, I went up right to Ellie and I was like, kill me. Like, yes, Ellie, get your revenge. Like, it just didn't matter. It's like, I'm sorry, you killed Joel. We had a whole game with Joel. I mean, Joel isn't a good guy. And I knew that, like, there were even instances in the first game where it was like, Joel did some messed up stuff. Like, like the whole thing with the whole thing with like the guy, like shambling on the street, like trying to get help or whatever. And Joel's like, no, I know what he's doing because I've done that stuff. Like, yeah, it wasn't any like shock that Joel was kind of a villain, but excuse me. But it just didn't work for me. Like, it was just an uphill battle the whole way, and it was like, I'm sorry, you killed Joel. I can't get past that.
Couldn't forgive her.
Yeah, it just didn't work. It was just weird. It was weird to do it in that order, I think.
I liked it in that order. But
well, you're wrong. So
I think it actually serviced it. I think it serviced the story well to where you see the death first and then you play as her.
He's with Landon?
The issue I actually had is I don't think you should have played as Abby before Joel was killed, because you have those sequences where you're playing as her. You're walking with Owen, you meet up with Tommy and Joel, you fight the infected, and then you meet up together, and then you kill Joel. And this kind of goes back to what I was stating in my review, is that at that point, then you played enough of her that like you kind of were in her shoes.
But she had no idea who it was. Like,
you kind of knew that she was looking for Joel. Like, it was pretty like
you were in her shoes, and so like that wasn't a decision that I would have made, and we didn't have enough story at that point to know. So like, I actually would have preferred it if we didn't play as her until the halfway point in the game, and that we.
So you would play through the snowstorm as like Joel and Tommy, and you find Abby. And you're playing.
Yeah,
Joel.
yeah. You find her, and then she's just another. Because at that point, you're not playing as her. You weren't experiencing the game through her as a character. We had enough.
You didn't know that she was the daughter.
Yes, that is yes.
Yeah, and I
that
agree.
is-
I totally agree. I think if it were my way, I would just say don't play as Abby at all. But especially in that first part where you're like, who is this? Why am I trying to why am I playing this character? Why would I do that? I would much agree. I would agree at it would be a lot better to play as Joel in those points of the
It
game.
sets the tension really well though when you're playing as Abby, because like you're like, all right, who's this person? And like you can tell that she's looking for someone, and then you're going through the store, like the snowstorm, and suddenly Joel and Tommy are there. Like I felt like you were tracking. I thought you were tracking Dina and Ellie's horse prints or whatever the footprints of their horses. And
Hoof
suddenly
prints,
prints, gosh dang,
horse prints,
I thought it set the tension.
those horse
really,
paws.
because like you're like, okay, something bad's gonna happen, and like Joel and Tommy just come out of nowhere, and then you fight with them for a bit, and then lead to the cabin. But I get what you're saying. I just don't know how they would. It might come off even more jarring that like you're just Joel and Tommy running around, and suddenly like you just save some random person, and then it turns out that they were looking for you.
Well, you wouldn't have even needed to save them. I'm like, you could have removed almost all of that from it, and like they just like meet up with these people, and then you get this death, and then later in the game you would learn the reason why that they were there is because they were tracking these people, and that they were there to kill. So like, I didn't like the fact that you played as Abby prior to Abby killing Joel. That's the issue I had.
Okay.
I'm fine that she is someone that killed him. I mean, not fine because I like Joel too, but and I was fine playing as Abby, but I really think that at least for me, like to kind of it was too much that you played her long enough. You were established her as a character, and then she does this thing that you're not okay with.
So, I have also some issues with playing as Abby. My opinion really veers off from Michael's, even though we have similar kind of critiques to the effectiveness.
Well, Michael's more vengeful than you are, right?
Right. So I
Kill.
I want to make it clear that this is generally not a sort of story I enjoy in fiction unless it's done in a certain way, and I don't think it's hard because
we get it, Will. You're a goody two shoes. You don't like revenge.
Well, the flow and the story direction is not a direction I generally enjoy, and it's hard to play something like that and enjoy it. That's why I have to kind of remove myself from my own I just don't personally like these kind of stories. It's like I still think there are good parts of the game, even though I didn't really enjoy it, like the running theme of the game, because ultimately a lot of what the game is about is compassion trumps revenge. Is kind of a heavy theme that kind of parallels Abby and Ellie. Like they're both in super similar situations, and they both end up at the same point of showing compassion rather than revenge, even though they play out differently. And it's frustrating for me to watch because I felt like the only aspect of the plot was that message and that kind of that
theme.
That was literally there's nothing that the characters don't drive the plot drives the characters.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that.
And that's a vast difference between the first one, is that the characters drove the plot rather than the plot drove the characters.
Yeah, the first game's plot is very pretty straightforward.
And that's why the characters were so special to me, is because the characters really kind of
were everything that the first game that made the first game what it was. Yeah.
And seeing that reversed in the second game is really jarring and unfortunate for me, because I really disliked how the characters took a backseat for the sake of the message and the plot. Because the whole time while you're watching these characters, there was nothing to me that stood out as me really enjoying who these characters were. Besides the flashbacks,
a bunch of people.
Well, I don't think you're supposed to. I think the game's supposed to make that clear. I think, but like for the first game, I really enjoyed Joel and Ellie's relationship. I've made that pretty clear at this point. But it was the little moments along the way that allowed the characters to breathe and to shine. This game's pacing is one plot point after the other, with very little room to breathe for the characters. And I felt like the only time the characters ever were able to breathe and to show themselves were in flashbacks or very short moments at the theater.
That's something that I had a problem with was all the stuff you find out in flashback.
Oh, really?
That was unfortunate to me that you didn't get to live through the character organically.
I
and
would have
in like real time.
I feel like I would have been more invested if it was real time, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't have an issue with it being in a flashback.
I mean, at the very least, I'm glad that they at least showed you it instead of just saying like, yeah, Joel, I found out why Joel, that Joel lied and blah blah blah. But
I do think the flashbacks are integral to the story. I think it really.
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
But what I'm saying is, and this goes back to, I think that there should have been a game before this game story. Is you could have lived throughout that whole story, because the first game ends with Joel saying, lying to Ellie.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what happens next? And then this game it jumps, and then you find out stuff in flashback, and it's just kind of, to me, it's unfortunate that you didn't get to live through those series of events.
I liked the way they did it with flashbacks. I felt like for me it worked with like the pacing of the story. Like you kind of get the different flashbacks, the different points Ellie's at in her journey, like the good memories, the bad memories. Like it seems like the memories she gets with Joel are like they get darker and darker as the story progresses. Like the first flashback you have is with her and Joel at the museum, and it's almost entirely positive. There's no really. I think that she maybe encounters that firefly pendant scroll on the wall with liar underneath it. That's the only thing that kind of is like somewhat dark about it, but it's like a really heartwarming moment. And then the next flashback, as her own personal story gets like really way darker, as she's killing Abby's friends, like is with her and Tommy, and then she goes with Joel to the music store, and she starts to kind of ask him like, hey, like questions about the fireflies, and Joel just kind of shuts it down. And then the final flashback, or not the final flashback, but the one like where she runs off back to the firefly, their old base in Salt Lake City. And they have the confrontation where he's like, "Yeah, I lied to you," and like her just like
I would have
down.
preferred that in its own game.
I think there's merit to that, and I think that also this game only like the good part, the part that I really liked was those flashbacks, and those flashbacks, to me, they were reflecting Ellie's emotional state. So it followed Ellie's like journey of like. For me, how I interpret it is that the more she was experiencing more and more negative flashbacks is because she's kind of spiraling deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole of killing, and what she's doing is right, and it's starting to slowly take a toll on her, only for the ending to happen, and you get that flashback where Ellie sees Joel in a good light finally, and that's and she only gets that flashback through showing like. Deciding to show forgiveness for Abby. I think it's not super clear.
Little jab, just throwing a little jab out there.
No, I'm not saying I don't think that's a jab. I don't think the game's clear in what went through Ellie's head to in her ending decision. I think
probably just a monumental amount of. It's probably a lot of different things that have been building up for.
Right, but I have to assume. I just would have liked an explicit character moment, but that's just my opinion. That's not actual too important. But
Will wanted another 1 hour flashback to happen at that point.
The whole entire Jackson playable from the start. But I think it's hard to have a game like if we were to play a second game in between this. I think I've come to think about it, and initially I was for that. But then the third game would have to be changed drastically because those flashbacks contribute so much to the third game. And the third game, which is the second one, what we were talking about. I'm trying to put it in a non-confusing way.
Doing a great job.
Last of Us Part 3, 33 and a third.
That's a Kingdom Hearts title right there. I felt like you'd have to drastically change that third game. Because a lot of that experience is from those flashbacks, and what would be in the second game is what I said.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked the nonlinear storytelling with the flashbacks. It worked for me. I didn't have a problem with Abby. I don't think I would want to know her. I didn't have a problem with playing her in the very beginning for like that first. I mean, you probably play for 45 minutes, maybe an hour.
Yeah, not that.
I didn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't have wanted to know her any more than that though, because I would have taken away from me at least. I would have taken away from the. I didn't want to know that character before she killed Joel. Like,
And that's kind of what I was saying. Like, I didn't want to know her until that happened, and then I think there would have been more impact when you start playing as her, because then like you'll have more feelings about it. Like, I didn't necessarily.
That goes to my point at having a game before this. When you play as her, you get a whole game with that, and then
I don't think you need that.
But I'm saying I think
the whole
expectation. That would be a bigger punch to you, where you're playing this whole game as this person that you know that they're looking for something. You don't really know what their motivation is yet, and then boom, you find out that she's looking for Joel and she wants to kill Joel. That would have been much more impactful to me, because you get this whole game bonding with this character, and then you're like, whoa, she's the daughter of the surgeon that Joel killed. Wow, that would be a lot more like, I guess, impactful, and like, I don't know, it would have worked better.
It would have made me like the character before.
Exactly.
I guess, but I don't think they wanted you to like the character before.
Yeah, right.
I think that was their whole intention.
I know, and I didn't like that. So I think that didn't work. That's what I'm saying.
Michael's trying to say that he didn't think that the game is structured very well, and that the game trying to make you like a character you already hate is not going to work for him, and he didn't.
Exactly.
Like that
It like I said, it was an uphill battle the whole way, and you're like, I don't care. She killed Joel. Like, I'm sorry, but
you would have preferred for the game to be structured a little differently, in that there was actually like 2 games, and then you spend that time with Abby, and it flows right into
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That wouldn't work for me. I don't. I mean,
I liked the way they did. I liked where you switch to her and start playing, and then you experience her. Because I got attached to her as a character. I thought she was actually a very interesting character, and I wasn't hating playing.
I'm not saying that she was an interesting character. What I'm saying is,
no, I know. I'm saying how I was feeling about her.
Wanting you to see from her perspective and feel sorry for her, and it was like, I don't care. She killed Joel.
Yeah, I know you didn't. I'm saying I did. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but I'm saying I did.
No, I know. I know you said that, and so now I'm sharing my opinion on it. I'm saying it worked for me.
Fine.
Like, it got to the point where like
I want to make sure that my point is heard.
No, we heard your point. You said that already.
Okay, good. I feel like I have to say things more than once.
No, you don't. You're fine.
The game really puts all its eggs in one basket, as if you actually
exactly. Once you get to that point, that's either going to work for you or it falls flat. And for me, it fell flat.
I would also say, though, I don't know if it's I did like Abby, but I don't think it's necessary for you to like legitimately like her character for the story to work. For me, like, I don't think it would, like, because with Ellie's experience, I don't even think at the end of it, like, you experience Abby's story and stuff, and at the very least, I think you could probably at least empathize. Could you at least empathize with where she was coming from? Like,
maybe a little bit,
because I'm like,
but again, it goes to that point where you're at like the boss fight with Ellie. I wanted Ellie to win. Like, that was so weird. It just didn't work for me. It was like, okay, yeah. Ellie, kill her. Well, yes.
I mean, at that point, I think, like, if you had to pick between one of them, I think all of us would pick Ellie, because we have a pre-established connection with her. But
you have a pre-established game with her.
At that
whole
point,
game,
like,
establishing who she is and connecting you to her and to Joel.
What I was saying, like, at that point, like, I'm like, well, if one of them has to die, I guess Abby. But I'm like, at that point, I was like, don't really want either of them to die.
Yeah.
Like,
and
like
the feeling that you two got of, I don't really want like Abby to die, was not shared by me and Michael.
I want Abby to die.
And it's like, because for me it was different, because I didn't want Ellie to kill. I thought the game set up a lose-lose situation either way. I thought the game was set up an unsatisfying ending, but that's kind of a little beside the point. But just the fact that there's a difference in how we perceive the character Abby, I think, is important, and it's really, really subjective.
Yeah, but and also I'll say, like, if you empathize with her, but from Ellie's from the character of Ellie's perspective, like, her whole arc, I don't even really know if it's about her forgiving Abby per se. Like, she lets her live at the end, but I really think her arc is forgiving Joel for what he did to her, because all the suffering that she goes through, especially even in the second game, is because of what Joel did.
Because of Joel.
It's what he did. Like, so, like, the weight of it, like, for me, like, all those flashbacks, like, what Joel did, in my opinion, is unforgivable. What he did in that moment, like, it's an unforgivable act.
I would disagree.
From my perspective, from Abby's shoes, from Ellie's shoes, like, the amount of weight that a decision has, like, what he did in that moment, like, if I was in Ellie's shoes, like, I don't know if I could forgive Joel for doing that. Like, the weight that she has to carry with her for the rest of her life, knowing that, like, and in the final flashback scene, she says that she's like, I should have died in that hospital. Like, my life could have meant something. You took that from me.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but in that moment, she's willing to forgive him. But then the very next day, she has to watch the one person that's cared about her and that she's cared about get butchered in front of her because of that decision. Like, at the end of the day, Joel pays the price for that decision, but the person that has to carry the weight of it is Ellie. Like, she has to carry that whole entire thing and all these horrific things that are happening to her, like, you know, is
because of Joel.
Because of Joel, and I think she
Yeah.
blames herself too. She's like, I could have, you know, it's partially like my fault. Like, I have to carry this guilt. She can't share with people that she's, you know, she doesn't. At one point, she shares with Dina that she can't get infected, but like, that's something that she has to hide because like people wouldn't believe her, they'd kill her or like try to do stuff to her. Like,
Mhm.
and I just think that like that mental, like you
Toll
see like,
that would take on you.
yeah, the toll that would, especially she's young. I mean, she's 19 in that game, and you can see like her mental health deteriorating. And I think even before Joel dies, like her mental state is clearly not very good. I mean, like that's just the match that ignites, you know, the gunpowder keg. So I think for me, I think it's like a really great mirroring of the first game. It's almost an opposite. Like the first game, Joel makes a series of unselfish decisions, taking Ellie to the end. And at the very end makes a very, very selfish decision that's very human that I don't think any of us could do the opposite of. Like we would all do the same thing in his shoes. And I think at the end of the second game, Ellie makes an extremely unselfish decision that I was like, I don't know if I was put in the same shoes that if I could do that. So I think it's an interesting like counter between their two characters that Ellie was able to be almost the better person in the end. She was able to like forgive Joel. Like I don't know if I could do that in her
How does that
shoes.
relate to her not killing Abby in the end, though? How does forgiving Joel then work its way to her?
I think this is an interesting question that Michael poses. So for Dave and Landon, I want to ask the question: how does Ellie grow throughout the game to forgive Joel?
Because you're saying at the end of the game, she forgives Joel through her actions. How is not killing Abby an action to forgive Joel?
Because that's something that Joel would have killed Abby.
But how is that forgiving Joel?
I think it's letting go of what he did. Like, I mean, Abby is the last kind of tie to like all this cycle of violence that's gone on. Like, killing Abby would be killing that love.
Yeah, it breaks the cycle. It breaks the cycle of violence that has
and it's like
perpetuated since Joel killed the surgeon.
I don't see how that's forgiving Joel, though.
I mean, I think what she was doing was that was pretty clear to me. Like her forgiving Joel, I don't know if it even has anything to do with like she just lets Abby live.
Yeah.
And I think it was just more just like she's done. She's like I think it comes down to two, like she had the agency to do something, like, which is another thing. And this might be like a long way to get to this, but I think something that Ellie really wanted was like her whole life she hasn't had the ability to make a choice on what to do with her life. And like the her being the cure at the hospital, like it's very explicitly clear that she would have made the choice to sacrifice herself. And Joel took that agency away from her. So I think her forgiving Abby in that moment and forgiving Joel, like she finally got to a point, because their first confrontation in the theater, she doesn't really have that agency to forgive Abby because Abby kind of kicks her ass in that fight. You know, I mean, like she's beat up. She doesn't have the opportunity. Like there's a chance for her to move on, but like it wasn't really her choice. Like she was beat up. Tommy was shot. Dina was severely,
and Jesse was dead.
Yeah, Jesse was capped. So I think she had that agency in that moment. She finally had a moment to make a choice of significance when she was drowning Abby in the water. And I think that's when she was finally able to like make that decision to forgive Joel.
Why didn't she make that decision when she was on the farm then?
I don't know. I wish she would have. I think
that would have been that would have been a happier.
Well, and then that just it adds to my point of the game where it was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why? Because again, the whole game was kind of about perspective. The fact that they never related Ellie, never related Joel's, father figure to Ellie with Ellie's mother figure to, I don't know,
Potato?
JJ. I'm assuming it's
Potato.
for Jesse, Joel, or something.
Like that.
Probably
Probably
been
that.
Jesse Jr., Joel Jr., and
Right.
something. I don't know.
AKA
But the
Potato.
fact that
Yeah.
but the fact that they like that to me would have been a much better character arc for Ellie if she realized, like, I understand why Joel made that decision to save me. I'm going to stay here and be a mother for this kid. But there was never that at all. Like there was never that like realization to what Joel did.
Yeah.
And it just was weird then to like, okay, I'm going to leave this all behind and I'm going to go get Abby. I got Abby. I'm not going to kill her. It just seemed like really, like, at the very least, I think that she should have stayed at the farm and had a happy life,
would've
or at the very least, kill Abby.
Also, Landon, how?
I mean, because oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I was just gonna ask again, how does Ellie grow to forgive Joel? Because you said, like, I think the game is clear in that Ellie's supposed to forgive Joel, but the game is not clear in how Ellie grows into forgiving Joel. For me, Ellie just kind of forgave him in the end.
I mean, I think it's probably through all the loss and the violence that's happening throughout the game.
And I mean, I don't think she actually has to forgive him. Maybe come to some type of terms. And like literally, it's hard to forgive someone when they're dead because you have other type of feelings and there's so much else involved with like guilt too. It's like what you can consider forgiveness is kind of more just like I don't want to feel bad thoughts about this person who is no longer around anymore. So like I wouldn't actually say that, maybe I wouldn't go as far to say that she actually forgives Joel for
I would say she
for what
forgives
he did.
herself. Not that she forgives Joel, like because she lets go of her like anger and her lust to destroy Abby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't really see that as forgiving Joel.
Well,
I guess that's what's confusing.
maybe I guess
me.
the term coming to peace with it or whatever, like what you said, coming to terms. Like, yeah, but I think she forgives herself too. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, because I think she blames herself for a lot of the stuff that happens.
Yeah, and she's the one that's deciding to go after Abby and all that stuff.
Yeah.
To me, it was just weird and kind of confusing to go from, okay, there was some form of like settling with the boss fight with Ellie and Abby. Then there was an ending for Ellie at the farm. Then she was like, nope, I have to go get Abby again. And then there really wasn't the ending you're expecting there.
Yeah, I would agree with Michael in that it's confusing how Ellie grows. I don't know if that was your point or not, but
yeah.
It's confusing to me how Ellie's character develops into something that the ending portrays. And it's not 110, it's not 100% clear. Maybe it's not supposed to be, but I think for me personally, I would have liked it to be a little more clear with how Ellie grows, because for me, I got the sense it was like a roller coaster back and forth of what her character was until she arrives at the destination at the end, rather than her properly learning lessons throughout the entire game, rather than her properly growing in a sense. She basically, my point is,
well, it's kind of just, yeah, it's sort of like a single-minded vendetta that she's on, and then fails, and then she tries again and has the opportunity to get the upper hand, and then she decides not to follow through.
Right, and that is, I think, frustrating for me because I like games with
growth, yeah, with character growth, yeah, of course. But yeah, that's why we consume stories, is for change, and if there's not that much change, then it's hard to be as invested in whatever the characters are doing or whatever's happening in the story.
Right, and that's why, like, probably even though I wasn't wasn't a fan of Abby's character, I felt like Abby's character was done better in certain aspects. Abby actually changed. Abby actually grew.
She had good character growth with how she changed in her opinions on things. And
even though I never really got invested in her character changes, there's character changes were still present, and I liked the character that she was, like, that allowed her to change. Lev, I liked his character. So it's hard for me to it's hard for me to view Ellie in the same way as Abby. There's supposed to be parallels, but I don't view them the same, and I'm not really invested. I lose investment in Ellie too, because she's just doing the same thing over and over and over again with no growth until finally she just magically grows at the end. And it's like, okay, I guess we're stuck in neutral for the entire game, and then we shifted into fifth gear.
Well, and at the very end of the game, the whole thing is Ellie lets Abby go, and she forgives somebody. Like, there's forgiveness there, clearly. But before that, there was this other boss battle with her and Abby. To me, it would have been better to come to that conclusion of forgiveness and just letting go. If, she comes up to Abby, she sees Abby strung up, like, just almost to the point of death,
like by the Seraphites or something in Seattle, as opposed to like happening months later in Santa Barbara. Like, are you saying like it would have been better if it had happened earlier in the story before going to the farm? Like if that forgiveness Abby was resolved earlier?
I'm just kind of like, I'm letting the game do its thing up until the point where Lev and Abby go to Santa Barbara, and then Ellie confronts Abby when she's strung up. I'm saying that would have been, to me, I would have bought that more if Ellie then was like, okay, Abby's like a destroyed person here. Like that to me would have been better if she was like
last fight out between the
exactly. Just cut the last fight, because that just it felt jarring and just weird. You know, it was just like
that's one of those examples of something that it was a decision. I'll agree with you there completely. That like that's not a decision I wanted to make, and it was very jarring. Like when I saw Abby up there, like as Ellie, I was like, I don't want to kill her at all. I wanted the opposite. Like I was like, what can I do to like help her to like fix this thing that's happened.
Exactly.
Like I didn't want to kill her at the moment at all.
That was the one time where I was like, Abby can go. Like that, I think that was punishment enough what she'd been through the past, I don't know, what was it, like a month or
like
2 months?
It was at least a few months,
6
right?
months. It was
2 months.
It was quite a while, and like
enough to like bring her down.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, she was almost unrecognizable because Abby is a character who's like, I mean, she could rip any of us in half. She was like a Hulk.
She was like Doomslayer guy without the
armor. and so you find her, and she's captured by these crazy people.
What are they? The Rattlers?
Yeah,
Landon's favorite characters.
and she's basically strung up to die, to starve, to thirst to death. How do you say it?
Probably just the weather, like the just die.
Right. She's exactly
maybe?
like she's.
Well, it almost looked like that she could have died from the tide.
Or that, yeah. I mean, she's like inches away from death. Either way, any way you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, there is like that's where Ellie should have been like, get out of here. I never want to see you again. Like,
yeah. For personally me, I also would have liked a light bulb moment. Like of like Ellie,
ding.
like a ding, like oh, it finally clicked. Something finally should have clicked for Ellie, and I think something does in the when she stops strangling Abby in the water. But for me, it was a little unsatisfying for me because it felt like it wasn't earned. It felt like it just happened, and I know I've said that already before, but I do honestly want to hear from Dave and Landon more about kind of our kind of takes on the story and our critiques of it.
Yeah, I think the ending, I still liked where the ending went. I did have like when they were on the farm, I'm like, yay. I'm like, yay, happy time. Yay.
Happy.
Like, yeah, I'm like, Ellie, like, you know, she didn't kill Abby. It's all good. Like, she's with Dina. They got the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything's good.
Lost little sheep.
And then that moment happens where the sheep is little baby goat or
that was
whatever.
Scary.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
Like out of all the game, that was one of the like the creepiest moments in the game.
Yeah, because like you're like everything's good, and then like you go in there and like
it's like something's not right.
Instantly, you just get this sense of dread. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, is like a clicker just gonna come out of nowhere?
That's what,
kill her. Like I'm like,
was it an infected goat or infected sheep? That's what I thought.
And Ellie's not immune to infected goats.
Oh no,
she turns into a zombie goat. And then like those horrible flashbacks happen. And then you're like, oh, like when that happened, I'm like, oh, okay, well, clearly
she's not over this.
Like, and
she's crying, potatoes crying, the goats are crying.
He's like, what's wrong with you? Like,
get yourself together, woman.
I guess maybe
you just be normal.
Geez, did you watch your surrogate father get murdered in front of you or something? Come on.
In a brutal fashion. So I guess like I as the player, I guess from like the player's perspective, like you
oh no.
You've been talking a lot about like player, what would it be, player agency or something, or like player decision, like the disconnect. Like, so I guess I did have a disconnect at that point because I was like, gosh, I'm like, don't go, Ellie, like just stay here, just like walk away, like. But I guess I could empathize with her not being able to let go, like having that carrot dangled out there, and like screw Tommy for even bringing that up. Like that's like kind of a dirtbag move.
Well,
like,
it did seem kind of like, was that in the video that you showed, Will, about that being really out of character for Tommy, or is that something that we had talked about at some point?
I think that was in one of the videos I shared.
Because it did kind of seem out of character for him. It didn't quite seem like something that he would do, because he was never big about, you know, going anywhere anyway. He was always about trying to stay and keeping Jackson.
But wasn't he the one that went after Joel?
I think that was,
but
I always thought that seemed more like it wasn't out of vengeance for Joel, but more to protect Ellie and keep her from going. But Ellie still was like, no, I'm going anyway.
But she should have known though that like she would go. Like,
he wrote in his note that said, make sure lock Ellie's horses up, lock all the horses up, make sure Ellie doesn't leave. Like his intention was very clearly to protect Ellie.
Okay.
Because like he and Joel, like they were never that close. I mean, they had like in the first game, you learned that they had some huge fallout at some point anyway. So like, yes, they've been together now for like 4 years or so, but I mean, it really did seem like it was more of a thing for the sake of Ellie, to keep Ellie safe. At least that's the impression I got from the story.
Yeah, because Tommy's always portrayed as a more righteous character than Joel. It seemed like, at least in like the he's
kind of like the greater good kind of guy.
Right, and Tommy earlier was like, "We got to leave for Dina."
Yeah, and he was the one that says, "Yeah, forget her. Let's go back." And then, and of course, she does shoot him in the head. So like maybe there was some.
Like,
actually, that's something I didn't think about. Actually, maybe he had some character change because of that. Because like how like people that get brain injuries can have like drastic changes in personality. Like
yeah.
I mean, it is a little bit of a stretch, but
when they shot him, I thought he was dead. Like,
I thought so too. I was like, oh no, Tommy.
There is that true story of kind of going with what you're saying, Dave.
It was the guy that had the bar that went through his head, right?
And there was a guy that got his head stuck through a super collider.
What's that?
It's a machine that shoots particles at
like super speed,
like super fast speed. So
it's smart stuff, Landon. Your meathead wouldn't understand.
So basically, a particle, like tiny particle, went through this guy's head. Basically, carterized all the way through his head. He lived, but like there were character changes with him and the guy that got the iron rod
that shot through his head.
And so that is a good point.
So I hadn't thought of that, but like if that didn't
that's such a subtle thing though.
Yeah. If that didn't affect him, then I would say it really was out of character for Tommy to be so, and to like put all of this all of this on her too. Like, you have to go and give up your new life. I feel like from what we've learned from Tommy that he would have been like, no, like you are safe now. You have your domestic happy life. You have your partner. You have your child. Like keep that. Like don't give that up. So that also was a little jarring too. It didn't seem quite in character. I didn't have as much issue with that because I never played as Tommy, but it didn't seem in character really at all for him. So
yeah. So I guess like if I were to change it at all, I would have had like the coming to forgiveness moment happen in Seattle. I guess like change the way their fight plays out. Like maybe the thing like Abby gets stuck on the island with the Seraphites, like you were saying, David, is like there, and then like Ellie goes there, finds her, they have a fight, and she forgives her.
I had these. Can we talk about story expectations where we thought the story was going? That's kind of. I thought there was going to be a point where there was reconciliation between Abby and Ellie, and that they were actually going to maybe work together against either Isaac or the big bad Seraphite. It's not what I wanted. It's not necessarily what I wanted in the story, but it's like where I thought it was going. And then both of those were kind of like red hair. Isaac, I'd say, was quite a big red herring.
Absolutely.
Like,
I
thought he was still an interesting character. He was an interesting character, but like he wasn't he wasn't utilized that much.
Which is a shame.
which is kind of a shame. And the Seraphites kind of as well. Like you have the huge Day 3 Seattle where you're Abby, where you're going. The Seraphites essentially are probably wiped out by whatever is left of the WLF. But I'm imagining the WLF is probably coming out on top there because they didn't send
firepower.
Yeah, well, and they still have their home at the stadium. They sent all their warriors and stuff, and you hear reports of things. So like I imagine that they probably come out on top, and eventually they grow back up into a force. The Seraphites, they're probably all but wiped out now. So
yeah. Good riddance. Scars.
You don't like those bigots, Landon? You have a problem with those bigots?
Dude, I hate it when they were whistling. Dude, that like the first time you encountered them with Ellie, you're like, wow.
That was so creepy.
Dude, I was so scared. I was like
terrified.
And you hear like
subtitles on,
the arrow.
And there's the whistling, and I'm like, oh no, like something's gonna happen. I keep walking.
And that park was creepy.
Yeah. Well, because you've been seeing like the stuff they've been doing to people for like hours.
Oh, yeah,
like,
and the TV station or the radio station, the people that were gutted and hanging, that was creepy.
Yeah, I was like, oh man.
I was really unsettled.
And it comes out of nowhere. You're just going, and you hear the whistling, and then you hear them like torturing some guy. Like, and I was like,
and then you hear,
no.
and then I'll get an arrow in the shoulder.
Like R1, hold R1. What?
Oh no. Yeah. So I would have liked Ellie to be on the farm, living happily ever after, but no happy ending.
Yeah, well, because it just seems like, and my problem with these type of stories is, it seems like they really push down the player or watcher's throat that depressing and just sad and just not a happy ending equals profound, and I don't think that that's true.
Yeah,
I'd probably agree with that.
And I would say though the ending.
I mean, because Ellie is left with absolutely nothing, and to me, one of the most heartbreaking parts is during the fight with Abby. She gets 2 of her fingers bitten off.
Yeah,
and she goes back, and this whole. I want to say this before I say this.
You want to say this before you say
like
this?
the most accurate. This game is like the most accurate guitar playing ever. As a guitar player myself, like all the chords are correct and everything, and you get to like choose the chords to play and stuff, and you can like play whatever song in whatever key you want. And I thought that was really cool, and it was a cool way to link Ellie and Joel together, because Joel's the one that taught Ellie how to play guitar, and I think that's really cool. So at the end of the game, Ellie loses 2 of her fingers on her left hand. She basically loses her ability to play guitar. She's left with no partner, no kid. She, I guess, had some reconciliation with Abby, but I mean, she's left with absolutely nothing.
Though
at least give her the opportunity to still play the guitar. like what the heck?
I don't know. I mean, I thought that was it did really drive it home that she lost that was kind of one of her big connections to Joel, and that was gone. So
she just loses everything, and it was like, gosh, man, like to
be fair, I didn't find the ending. I found it bittersweet, but I did kind of leave with somewhat of a hopeful. It left me a little bit hopeful.
I mean, she's still alive. She's still young. Yes, she's had like a horrible childhood and young adulthood, but like she still has her life and she has somewhere to go. So like that at least is something that's not.
Yeah.
And my assumption is that, and this is 100% up to interpretation, but I would assume. I heard a couple different takes, but I would assume, like in that point, that she probably goes back to Jackson. Would be my assumption, and I
don't know. I don't.
You don't think she could find? You don't think she could find reconciliation with Dina or Tommy or anybody?
No,
I don't know.
I don't see. I mean, she was with Dina for like 18 months before she went after Abby. I mean, like it wasn't like they were just together for a little bit.
I think if she goes back to Jackson, that's contradictory to the game's ending.
How so?
Because the whole kind of point of the game's ending is she loses everything except herself, and for her only to go back and reconcile, it feels like that would lose some sort of oomph that the ending was.
That would be in line with the whole game, though, like just going back and forth.
But I mean, like, you can hit rock bottom and climb back from it. Like you can lose everything.
Sounds like a country song.
Right here, rock
if you're going through hell, keep on going. Don't
ask
slow
Ellie to play
down.
guitar.
I thought she was gonna flip the guitar and like start learning the other way.
Left-handed.
Yeah. Like I know that would be hard, but I thought that would have been kind of interesting to do. Like she's like, you can see that she's like taking steps to like. You see that she's like taking steps to
quick time events, like restringing the guitar.
You don't do it right, it's string snap. Throw. You're like. I don't know. I think, and then I've heard some people say that they think that the scene with her going back to the farm the last time takes place sometime after she's been back in Jackson.
Oh,
because there's some visual cues like
she has the bracelet on again.
Oh, you read that? Well, that she doesn't have any weapons with her, and she doesn't appear to be in any way injured anymore. Like all her
except
wounds.
for missing 2 fingers.
I mean, they're fairly healed though, so I don't know. Because she doesn't even ask if anybody's in the house. Like she just kind of walks in, like she knows that it's
a video game, Landon. No one ever asks if anyone's home. They just barge through the doors and start looting things.
Yeah.
Or you start breaking pots looking for rupees.
Yeah. So if she doesn't go back to Jackson, what do you think she does then? Like, what do you think
I don't know. That's either for part 3 or for speculation.
I just can't wait for the 3rd game where you play as a character who, like, the son of a character that Ellie just killed, like, randomly.
Yeah, like,
that was my dad.
Ellie dies in the first 2 hours.
Right, yeah.
No, see, it'll be someone that Lev killed.
JJ. But like he's only 6, so it's like you're just waddling around like.
No, see, I'm gonna guess that she like travels south to Mexico, and then she climbs the wall, falls into Mexico, and then they realize that all of this actually only happened in the US and the rest of the world is fine. And so so she just joins the rest of the planet, and
I don't think
with no infected.
Normal society.
I don't.
Also, your wall argument is invalid because
because it happens before, because it's 2013.
Yeah.
Way to try to get it political, Dave.
Jeez, no surprise.
Yeah, Trump never became president.
What a surprise!
I don't see that. I don't see there being a third game. I mean, they could write whatever they want, but the game didn't leave.
It'll be a
off.
prequel.
It didn't stop with me. Right, you get to play the parts that there were flashbacks. The game.
No, it's pre-infected. You're just like Joel doing whatever he does in Texas,
being a construction
guy.
foreman stuff.
It's job money problem.
It just the game didn't end with
paying
me thinking
bills.
there's going to be a third game, and not that there needs to be, but that's just a takeaway I had where it was like, yeah,
if
like the way the first game ends, you're like, holy crap, there's going to be like something coming up next, and
yeah, I think it could I'd be satisfied with it being ended there. If they made a third game, I would really want the game to have. I would still want it to have a dark tone to it, but I would want it to have more of a redemptive kind of arc.
What if the third game is your Abby and Lev,
Redemption Red,
and it has nothing to do with Ellie? I mean, we know Michael wouldn't play it.
I would still play it, but I'm not as attached to those characters as I am to Ellie. So I don't know.
You could play as the dog.
Yeah, I think I killed all the dogs in the game.
I'd always bring out the
dog.
Molotov immediately and just throw it at him. That's what I would do.
I would shoot the owner because then the dog would like start whimpering by the owner's dead body, so it would make it a lot easier to shoot.
This game is making us sound like psychopaths.
I mean, you are a psychopath.
That actually is kind of one thing I expected the game to touch on was like just how much killing you actually do, and that's what I thought they were doing when you switch to Abby and you're with Nora and you walk into that hut and you see all the bodies that were clearly from I think when the Seraphites were killing people, but I thought it was people that Ellie had been killing,
That's
and they're like there's this crazy person that's going around killing all of our people, and like I thought that's kind of the way that it was going to go. But then
that's exactly
kind of was an offshoot with like the Seraphites is the big bad. And then like, yes, you encounter the one Tommy thing at one point where he's sniping you, but then that, he falls in the water and then you move on and you're back to kind of just having the Seraphites as your enemies.
At that moment, did Abby recognize that was Tommy?
Yeah, because he's like, oh crap! Like she's like, oh crap! like she and I think Yara was like, oh, who's that? And she's like, don't worry about it. Like
that was nobody. I'm a good person.
If only Tommy could have just killed her right there.
If only.
Then Ellie doesn't have to be a bad person.
Oh gosh. So really quick, can we touch on like the discourse that's surrounding this game? As in
pretty toxic.
Like
from like the fans.
The fans, yeah. So, a lot. This game is talking about this game for the most part. The controversial. It's a really controversial, but people are really dumb.
And I mean, we disagree. I think each and every one of us disagree on at least one or three things or whatever.
Yeah.
Especially Landon. But we're not going out and like
what?
Rest in peace.
You're like your
mic is cutting out.
Oh, I was just making fun of Landon. That was all.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
but yeah, there's a huge group of people out there that are like sending death threats to like the voice actresses
and the director.
And the director. It's like, what in the like? I didn't like the game very much, but I can't relate to that at all.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, sending death threats to the voice actors, like they have nothing to do with the character choices. Like, like that makes no sense.
And
it's
also,
stupid.
like, it's kind of like disheartening because like people are always clamoring for like higher level of stories or more mature stories to be told in games and stuff. And it's like, this is one of the first. Like we don't get this many. Oh, my voice is going out.
You okay?
Like. If you want more games like this that take risks with stories and try to tell more darker tales, like
and don't be a horrible player base.
Like maybe some stuff didn't work for you, like which is fine. Like that's probably going to be like I think I would rather have a game that we could all discuss about this. The fact that we played the same game and all four of us have different takeaways from the story, as opposed to like I'm trying to think of a game. I guess I'm playing through Ghost of Tsushima right now. Like I
want to buy that.
I bet we're all going to play through it. And the story's gonna be like, oh yeah, that's good, video game story, or like any Far Cry game or Assassin's, any game where it's like, like when you talk about the story, there's really like nothing to talk about, like there's no like, it's just beat for beat, like, video game story, bad guy, you do the missions, fetch quests, like I for one, and it's probably because maybe the game worked for me on almost every level. Like I have nitpicks and stuff, like we were talking about the endings and stuff, like where I could think of different ways to go, but I'm like, I'm a fan, like. I want more games like this.
Mhm.
Like where like, and even if it turns out where I don't like it or the way it goes, but I'm like, it would be kind of cool for the medium of video games to be able to like get to that point. Cause like Dave and I'd always talk, like we said earlier, like most of the time, like if I want a really good story, I'm not looking for it in video games, but like it would be kind of cool to get to a point where that, like where I could get great stories in video games on a regular basis.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, look at both Last of Us games, especially Uncharted 4, but
Divinity Original Sin 2.
Oh,
I mean,
stop
and
it.
that one you get to make decisions, and you can really shape what happens in that game.
talk
and
about
you
Divinity 2.
You really feel like the agency of your characters, to use Landon's favorite phrase.
let him keep going. No, keep going. Keep going,
I'm
Dave.
gonna keep talking about stupid crap.
But yeah, no, I think we're getting there.
Yeah. So, but for me, it's just disheartening to see like, people that play games always get a bad rap for being like immature,
Right.
man children, and then it's like this game comes out and it's like, okay, well, you guys
Just proved your point.
Proved your point.
Yeah.
Like that maybe we're not like mature enough to have like
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I like that they took risks with it.
Yeah, and I think you need to do that in this day and age.
Yeah. And
Otherwise, you're just another forgettable game.
Yeah.
for a lot of people, the risks didn't pay off, but that's no excuse to ever do whatever. Like like it goes without saying, don't send death threats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To like
And like, don't
if you can't distinguish between the actor and the actresses and the characters that they're playing, you need to stop probably playing video games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
I find it hard to think of any reason to send a death threat, but especially for a video game.
Well, unless you watch
video game
someone that you
actor.
love get beaten to death in front of you, right?
I'll kill them all.
It's like the argument like we always have about like Star Wars fans are
Oh my
terrible. You know what I mean? Like we're like none of us like the new trilogy that much.
I like one of them.
But as a whole, like we're like
As a
you
trilogy,
weren't really like that happy with like the way the story went.
Right,
So
well, I
it's
It's
think I've said
all
before.
Laura Dern's fault.
I think I've said before that. I mean, if I wanted to watch all the Star Wars movies, I'd go through the prequels, the original trilogy, and then I'd stop there.
yeah. So, but at the end of the day, like
Yeah,
I
that's a big
don't
yikes,
think
yep.
it's like affected any of us deeply to our core. Like we're sitting up at night, like Star
I'm not
Wars,
like Kathleen Kennedy or
yeah.
Disney. You ruined my childhood. You deliver me.
I'm pretty
You
sure
will not take it from
there
me.
are Star Wars fans who are like that.
Oh yeah,
absolutely,
tons of them.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. It's
Oh,
And it was
okay,
back in the prequels to the sending death threats to do the voice or play Jar Jar Binks. Like
I'm sending death threats to the
Gosh,
kid that played
that's-
Anakin too.
that's,
and
a,
that
ho- that's
messed
a
him up.
horrible story. That
Yeah.
the
he was
Floyd?
suicidal.
Yeah, I watched a video where he was kind of explaining what he went through, and it's just like horrible. Like he was on a bridge, like he was ready to take his
Yeah.
own life, and just the fact that like so much hate came at him for a fictional character in a movie, like that's so
For a character
stupid.
that he was
And it
probably
wasn't
directed
even-
to play like that.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't even
And-
mostly his.
and a character that a lot of people like. I mean,
When I was a kid, I loved
we make
him.
fun of Jar Jar, but
Booty Dopot Slamo.
there's a lot of people that like the character Jar Jar.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm sorry, but they're out there.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, there.
It's probably actually a vocal minority of people that don't like him.
I mean, probably they're just the louder ones.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
with anything. The people like the vocal minority, because like people that are fine with it don't go on internet forums,
Right,
or
and not
send
like
death
this is
threats.
an amazing thing.
Like people that liked him weren't probably sending him love letters, and then they like, oh, you did a
Unfortunately,
I
great
love
job.
your floppy ears, Jar Jar.
They just like kill yourself, you dumb big eared, and it's like
You dumb Gungan.
cool though because
Yeah.
he's actually doing more Star Wars stuff.
That's cool.
He does there's a YouTube channel, I think it's called Star Wars Kids, and it's like a obstacle game thing for kids.
Oh, I
And
think I
he's
saw
like
that.
he's like the host. He's like a Jedi host person, and it's like all Star Wars themed. And the kids go through like these obstacle things, and they at the end they like the winner becomes Jedi's, and they get their own lightsabers and stuff. It's kind of cool for
yeah,
Oh, that's
Um,
really cool. That's a good bounce back.
it. Yeah, it is.
yeah.
But yeah, it's horrible to see fans and even people who aren't fans that just pile on. It's like that has real world consequences, and
Yeah.
you know, for either party. And it's just it's so stupid.
And
that-
like especially
it
the
comes to
like
that.
the people that made this game worked really hard on it. I mean,
Yeah,
even
and-
if you like the story, if you don't like the story directions, like as far as like production value, attention to detail, acting, graphics, gameplay, like it's in almost a league of its own. I would think on like
it's very well done
yeah,
as a game. I mean, we're talking about how cinematic it looks, how the the voice acting was amazing, how the facial animations, all that. Like, it's a beautiful game, and I think it's well executed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's just a shame that people are stupid.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it.
And unfortunately, they're always going to be stupid people.
Yeah.
They actually Metacritic changed some of their policies because of the game.
Yeah, you have to wait to post a review, right?
A user review can't be posted till 36 hours after the game comes out, because like the game came out within minutes. Like, people were just review bombing it with zeros, which I don't know how you could play the game and give it a 0 out of 10. I don't know what it's sitting at now. They've deleted a lot of the user reviews that were zeros.
Well, I think 0 is an easy way to say I don't like the game. 0. Like, it's just like caveman say, like
dumb.
If I was dumb,
it's
I'd
like
be
a 1-star review on on a restaurant on Google Maps.
It's like horrible everything, blah blah blah. It's just a rage review. It shouldn't be taken seriously. I think what should be taken seriously are YouTube reviews in which like they go super in depth, or they
or like a podcast where people talk about it,
right? Or just people talking about it in a
please like and reviews
general sense of what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, and that should be like, I've seen so many different views across the spectrum of liking, disliking.
Can I read? Okay, so I pulled up Metacritic. Yeah. Can I read a user review that's 1 star or that's 0?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, this is by Rover EXE. 0 score. Killed Joel for no reason. Abby is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in a game, and I can't even kill it at the end. Truckman, die in a fire. This game is absolute trash.
Some high class stuff right there.
Those are the type of user reviews that are on 32,448 negative Metacritic user reviews on this game.
Yeah, it got review bombed hard.
My goodness. Yeah, see, things like when you see, I like to think people like are inherently good, but then you experience the world and you're like, people are inherently stupid. I think that's the better. I think that's the better approach.
I think people are inherently stupid and bad, and then like you have to actively fight to be good. Like, that's an active choice that you have to like do every day to try to make good decisions.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And that's why I give The Last of Us Part 2 a 10 out of 10.
Oh my gosh,
because I'm a good person.
Gosh, dang it.
What were your like favorite moments from the games though? Like that game. Like, do you guys have like highlighted like moments, either gameplay encounters or like story
all
beats?
The gameplay I loved. It was great. I loved the tense moments when you're like either in a building and you're trying to get out, or there's a point where you're playing as Abby and you're trying to get some medical supplies, and you're going through a wing in the hospital where the infected haven't been cleared yet. And that was a really fun, intense part of the game where you're like, I'm down here alone, I'm trying to get this stuff, and then you encounter this
Rat King.
This mass terrifying thing.
Yeah, the Rat King was frightening. I had some non-ironic screams during that fight. I ran around a corner. Well, okay, so in the fight, like, the blob is running around, but it was only about like after I had taken off a fair amount of its health, it started bursting through walls, and I didn't know that it could do that because I was like in a place where I was like, oh, I'm good, and it burst through, and I was like, ah! And Brianna was right next to me when I was playing the fight, and she was looking at me like I'm crazy, and I'm like, no, look at this thing, look at this creepy monster that's trying to kill me.
Yeah,
and then like infected start like falling off of it, like they start.
And like the one like slithers off after you kill it, and you have to chase that thing.
Yeah, it's awesome because it starts as a chase thing. You're just running from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I can't run it anymore.
Well, that's what I was hoping too, because I was like, I really don't want to have to fight whatever this thing is. And then you're running from it. I was like, okay, good. It's just a running away thing. And then you get to the end of the room and you're like, no, I have to kill this thing.
I thankfully had a lot of ammo saved up. Like a lot of flaming
unloaded
shotgun.
all of my flamethrower ammo on that thing.
Oh, same. I was just like guns away. Like I just started blasting. Like,
then I just started blasting. Yeah, that scene was awesome. I really
the museum flashback.
The museum flashback.
That was really well done.
That might be for me like
that's
the best hour of any game.
That's something that these Naughty Dog games, The Last of Us and Uncharted games especially, do really well. Is they just feel like real things are happening. Like
they're not characters. They're like real people.
Yeah, and I think that works really well with those type of things. And Ellie just seems like such a real kid sometimes, and it's really nice to see that.
I'm not a dinosaur.
Yeah,
I want a dinosaur.
yeah, it's like just and they make it in a way where like it's a linear experience, but you feel like you're discovering stuff still. Like when you climb the dinosaur, you're like, you could have skipped that. You didn't have to do that.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Wait, you can climb the dinosaur?
You didn't climb the dinosaur and jump off?
No, which one can you climb?
It's the one outside.
The
the
one
museum.
up, the really big
It's in the
T-Rex.
pond.
Oh, I didn't
didn't climb it. I didn't know you could climb it.
I've seen
Yeah,
that
you
clip.
climb,
I
you
find it
climb
weird.
up the
top, and
tail.
Joel's like, "Be careful, come on!" And then you get to the top. He's like, "Don't jump!" She's like, she jumps off,
And she's like,
"He's all
I'm
scared."
on a dinosaur.
Yeah,
No, I didn't climb it.
No.
Oh dang.
yeah.
It was a fun moment.
There's just so many cool little moments in that, and then it's
Put the
capped.
hat on, Joel.
Yeah, and then it's capped off with that amazing scene in the space capsule.
Oh,
Yeah. They
That's
kind of had
so
a
good.
similar moment to that in the DLC for the first game, where you're playing the arcade and
Yep.
The fighting game?
right, and you're imagining what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
There's a moment like that in the part 2 where you're in a museum and you're getting a space capsule with a space helmet on, and you're imagining a takeoff sequence.
Yeah, and Joel gives for your birth. It's your birthday, and he has an audio tape of like the Apollo 11 mission.
Yeah.
And it just like it goes to just playing that audio tape, and it's just kind of in on Ellie's face with the space helmet on, and you can just like you can just see the imagination.
Again,
on her
yeah,
face,
it goes to the facial animations in this game where it's like that is so believable, and just like there's like little like subtle like just smiles or like lifts of the eyebrow. Like I don't know how they do it, but it's so believable to me that that's how she would react or that's how she would look. Imagining this.
Yeah, it's such a good scene. Like.
Yeah,
that's probably one of my favorite moments. I really
and it just really makes you like Joel.
Yeah.
Joel's so cool.
and it happens in a good point in the game too. Like it happens after a really unrelenting point in the game. Like I think it's the end
First
of Seattle Day 1.
Yeah.
Like so you've gone through all this like harrowing stuff and like you're so shot from all of it, and then like they just throw that in there and like it kind of just reels you back in a little bit, lets you relax and catch your breath. I really liked another one. I know you didn't like playing as Abby in the very beginning, but I really liked when you were running from like the horde of infected.
Yeah.
What part was that?
When you're like in the blizzard, like, and you haven't met up with Joel or Tommy yet, and you're running,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a scene where you're going in between this chain link fence in a building, and they're like
it's
slamming against the chain
creepy.
link fence and it's pushing up against you, and you're like, oh man, like this is so tense.
Yeah.
Like all the chase sequences I really liked when like stuff broke down. Like, and you were kind of just left to run. There's a part where you're running with Dina from some, and then there's when you chase Nora through the hospital.
Yeah.
I loved that scene. Like it's so tense. Like you're just running after, like crashing through like doors and stuff. Like, and like I said, it feels really organic. Like where you feel like, oh, I could make a wrong turn here, but like it doesn't. The game does a good job of directing you, but still feeling like you're actually in control of the moment.
I wonder.
I liked the set pieces that the game had. One that I really liked was when you're Abby and you're climbing down the really tall building, and it's like the insides are kind of like melted basically, and you're trying to get down that. I really liked that level. I thought that one was really fun. That's where you find a flamethrower.
That, and when you're, I think it's before that, when you're going across the really terrifying bridge.
Oh, dude, that's so cool.
That's another thing I want to say. I don't know if I talked about this in the previous episodes, but Abby as a character, she is terrified of heights. Like that's a big thing with her.
Mm-hmm.
And the game shows you that so well by just if you're controlling the character and you look down like a big drop or whatever, the camera kind of pulls out a little bit and kind of starts pulsing. You can hear her voice like
it does the vertigo effect
a little bit. Yeah, the vertigo thing. You can hear her breathing harder, and that's such a cool detail that is shown through you, not just through a through a cutscene or whatever,
Or some random dialogue.
Or,
it's actually
but it's actually like it immerses you in that character. I just thought that was really cool. Like every single time I would go like look and like, oh gosh.
Or just the way your character wobbles, kind of like you come into a ledge, like you don't just like naturally, like the animation doesn't stay the same, you just walk off, like they kind of like do a little flutter, like lean, like you would naturally, and then they jump off. Yeah, the little attentions to detail.
Yeah, I first noticed that when I was like, oh, can I go down here? And I just drop and I just die, and I'm like, oh no, I can't.
I love all the safe cracking stuff.
Yeah,
I think that
I
was
missed one.
Really cool how
I got it.
really cool how they
No, you didn't, did you?
No, I didn't.
yeah, I think it was cool how they integrated, finding the safe combinations throughout the world, and you feel like you're actually solving it yourself.
It's just funny
It's not
how
some
they're
stupid piece of like.
Right. It's not like you grab one thing and then you can unlock the safe.
Yeah.
There's certain points where you find a piece of paper that's like, hey, I left a bunch of stuff in our safe. The combination's our birthday. Or whatever.
What's the line from Resident Evil? You guys know the one I'm talking about?
No.
The quote about being the master of safe cracking or whatever. I, the master of safe cracking.
No, I don't. Which game is that? First one?
It's like a Resident Evil. It's it's like the first or second one, I think. But it's like one of those quotes that are like bad video game quotes.
Oh,
that
great.
are like bad voice acting.
Resident Evil is kind of known for that. Like,
yes, definitely.
Except the newer ones, right? The newer ones are pretty good. They kind of up to
Well,
quality.
voice acting has come a long way in video games.
yeah.
I mean, it
Oh,
was
yeah.
notoriously bad.
Can't wait to play Final
decades
Fantasy
ago.
10.
Oh no.
I have that up next for playing.
Anyway, yeah.
I think, is there anything else we want to say about the game?
The final flashback with Joel and Ellie.
Mm.
That scene had me crying.
That was
I'll
really
just say that. Like,
heartbreaking.
that part I was like kind of just bawling my eyes out like a small child, but scraped
Right.
to me. Like,
Oh, where he says that he would do it again.
yeah, that whole scene. Like you get back to the farm, you sit down. Like you had like that quick flash when she's drowning Abby.
All right. Yeah, I was going to talk about this. So I think was it last week or maybe it was 2 weeks ago? I said that I don't think it was the weak decision for Joel to.
Because we were talking about the first game, and I was saying that Joel made the weak decision there because he was, he chose selfishly Ellie over
the world.
humanity, basically. Yeah. And Will was saying that he didn't agree with it after playing the second game.
Uh-huh.
Once I finished the second game, I totally agree with Will. Like, and this scene that we're talking about, Joel, it's basically Joel is sacrificing himself because he knew that this was probably going to come back and bite him, which it does.
Yeah. And the fact that he was okay, like having to deal with the fact that Ellie,
right, that she would probably find out someday, and that she would not react well.
Right. Yeah, and it's a selfish act, yes, but it's also a sacrificial act too. It's also
yes.
I think Ellie deserves to live, is what Joel is also thinking. Because
he basically traded lives there.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Right.
And
traded a lot of lives.
Her life for every single other life.
and that is not a weak choice. So
I still think it was a weak decision.
I
completely I do a 180 on his decision.
And I don't know. I just like getting to see both their perspectives, that he's still, there's no regret. I like that there's no regret though with him. He's just like he's sticking to his guns. Yeah, he's sticking to his guns. Yeah. And then I like that Ellie's honest with him, that she's like, I don't know if I can forgive you. But she's going to try. But it's just such a powerful moment. Like she's like, what you did is horrific and basically unforgivable, but I care about you. Right. I want to try to make this work. And then I think that also comes back to why she's so angry that she even gets robbed of the chance to try to reconcile because of the decision. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I can totally understand. I guess the whole game, I was able to just really empathize with where Ellie was coming from, even though I disagreed with some of the decisions she was making. Like I could get why she was doing it. So
Joe's so awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, this is really sad right now.
I will say that too. The game is extremely sad.
Extremely sad.
It's an extremely sad game to play. It's not.
You got to be a big boy to play
it's
this
not
game.
fun. Yeah. It's not fun to play. I don't think.
I like playing. I mean, but like it.
At least
it's weighty. It's heavy. Like
it wasn't a fun game to play. It was more of an experience that you have to
get through.
That you have to endure.
I have to endure. That was it. That was what it was for me. And maybe that's just because of my personal preferences. But I think that also had an impact on how I enjoyed the game too, because I don't think there was very little points in the game where I had genuine fun playing it.
I think that's somewhat valid. It's a heavy, dark game.
Yeah,
you're not playing a Ratchet and Clank game.
Right. Well, even in the first Last of Us, there was like a sliver of light and hope in Joel and Ellie's relationship. Mm-hmm. That was the violence felt justified because Joel was trying to protect Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there was this driving hope, this driving good behind a layer of a lot of bad.
And that was missing from this game.
That was completely missing. And for me, not only is that tough to swallow, but that's tough for me to get invested in something all bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, sad game.
Still, you should play.
Yeah, if you've played the first one, without a doubt, play the second one because I think they actually.
Well, hopefully by
complement
now
each
the people
other.
that are listening have played the
Yeah,
second one.
Right. But yeah, and that's what I would tell somebody who's one of my friends of the show, Jordan. He's saying he has a desire to play through The Last of Us, and I think we can all agree play the second one too.
Yeah. I think the second one complements the first game. I think it makes the first game's story better, and I think it is a natural for the I would say it fits with the narrative of the first game. I don't feel like for me it wasn't jarring where I'm like, oh, this ruins the first game or this ruins its legacy. I'm like, it felt like it fit.
I have problems with the second game. I don't think it ruins the first game.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't ruin it or uphold it. It just is.
I think it's
part of it.
I think it upholds it. I think it makes.
I disagree.
I think it makes Joel's decision extremely way more compelling, and I think it makes. I mean, it is way darker, but I think the game had to be darker, and I like that it addresses the fallout of the decision. That it's. I like that they'd have to deal with it. It's not something that we move on, and there's a story of Joel and Ellie, that her forgiving him, but I feel like
I think.
You have to. What's the saying? You have to pay the piper. There's going to be a consequence for actions.
Right, but you can have that consequence play out in different ways, right? So I think what me and Michael, or is it Michael and I?
Michael and I.
What Michael and I would have wanted was to have it. We would have loved to still see all of those things you said. Every single one of those. I think all four of us would agree. Yeah, we need to have those things in a proper sequel to The Last of Us. But I think all of us would disagree on how we would want it to play out. And I think for me personally, what we got wasn't what I wanted, partly because of what they showed in the trailer. I'm just kidding.
Gosh, oh my gosh.
So an interesting point.
Oh man, we really have to talk about this complaint.
If you don't want to.
No,
okay.
That's fine. You can bring up your really grasping at straws.
I think it's a valid complaint though.
Yeah.
Because it sets the explain what it is.
Okay, so back when before the game was released, there was an E3 trailer, and E3 is the Electronic Entertainment Expo, where they show a bunch of video games and
something from
hardware.
Something that doesn't exist anymore.
It might not exist ever again. But essentially, Sony was doing a press conference, and the game was present during the press conference, and they were showing off a trailer for the game. And during the trailer, in the game, it shows a cutscene where a man grabs Ellie from behind to kind of quiet her in case that she makes a noise because there's enemies running nearby. And Ellie turns around and says, "What are you doing here?" And it's Joel, and he says, "I'm not going to let you do this alone."
Yeah, and in the game, it's Danny DeVito.
In the game, they switched that because Joel obviously dies 2 hours in. Spoilers. To Jesse. Jesse is the one that grabs her from behind to quiet her. And Ellie says, "What are you doing here?" And Jesse says, "I'm not going to let you do this alone." So for me, that put an expectation is that I already knew from the promotional material that Ellie's going on a journey. And that trailer told me that Joel is going to join Ellie on that journey and be an active participant in the game. The final product is not that. So
it's misleading.
It's a misleading. They knew that fans wanted to see more of Joel and Ellie. So they put that in the trailer to hype everybody up and sell the game. And basically, Dave put a really good similarity is that it's a Metal Gear Solid. It's Metal Gear Solid 2.
Metal Gear Solid 2, yeah.
So Metal Gear Solid 2
Sons of the Patriots.
Sons of the Patriots was all about this character. It was a big boss, or
no? You start out as Solid Snake because in the first game you play Solid Snake.
I know you play Raiden.
Yeah, so all the
Is that true?
Raiden.
2 hours in, you play as Raiden.
No, you said it fine. No. Yeah, I'm laughing because you play as Raiden.
It's like a simulation or something.
I don't remember. It's yeah. There's that game. That franchise is crazy.
Kojima, so what do you expect?
But yeah, no, you didn't say anything wrong. I was laughing because what you said is correct, Michael. You play as Raiden, which is
Raiden correctly?
No, it's
it's
Raiden. It's gated. It's guided. Ninja guided.
I don't even know which one's the correct one.
Yeah, I don't remember either. Anyway, the first game, Metal Gear Solid, you play as Solid Snake. You're on Shadow Moses Island. You go through and you fight all these bosses, and it has a really interesting story. It's crazy and insane, and it was a really fun game, pretty short, concise. The next game came out a couple years later, and then you start the game as Snake again. You're on this boat. I think the marketing was all about Snake. You're Snake on, playing Snake again. And it's 2 or 3 hours into the game, something happens. I can't remember if he gets captured or something. And then there's this switch change, and you're now playing as this new character you've never seen before, Raiden, who is part of this similar organization that I think Snake was a part of. But he's like this annoying kind of whiny character. He has this girlfriend that he's always talking to on the codec who is also annoying and whiny, and it's kind of like really jarring, and it's so different than playing as Snake because he was a cool character and his story was interesting and compelling, and it switches so early into the game. And so it caused a lot of controversy at the time when it came out because people wanted to play Snake again. You do play Snake in later games again, but the second game does have an interesting story, but they purposely did that so that you were expecting to play a Snake, and then they kind of surprised you with this completely different story because they didn't want the players to anticipate what was going to happen.
Right. And so that is perfectly sums up why fans are disappointed. It's the exact same situation.
It justifies the death threats. You're right.
I didn't say that.
I'm just kidding.
Wow. Gosh dang it, Landon. But it sums up why a lot of fans are disappointed, including myself. And a little disclaimer: I got spoiled that Joel dies in the game before it came out. There was a huge leak, and I got spoiled that Joel dies. However, I was shocked that it happened 2 hours in. So I still had the feeling of disappointment in that Joel is not an active participant in the game. And I was expecting Joel to be an active participant based on what they told me of what was the game. What actually was the game was Joel and Ellie going on another adventure.
You were wanting another Joel Ellie romp through the US.
That was what they were selling us through the trailers, and they give us something completely
I guess
different.
I just didn't I didn't watch any of the trailers or follow any of the marketing.
That would have serviced me more. But the problem is that the trailers were misleading, and for fans who analyze the trailers and like the trailers, and were like, when I was a kid, I could not help but watch trailers over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, and this goes to say with any trailer for anything.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
I have a problem with when they do that with movies, when they show something in a trailer in the movie and then it's not in the movie.
Mhm.
I get it. It's a little different because a lot of times when they release a trailer, the movie's not done shooting yet. It's not being done, done editing.
Sometimes scenes are taken out.
Yeah, and I get that. So it's a little bit different with that. But this is such a specific story choice to put Joel in, where it's like, really, like I'm sure that there wasn't that big of a change where they were like, actually, we're gonna kill Joel.
Yeah, they decide like 6 months before the game.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah,
we're
We're gonna literally switch Jesse and Joel.
Right. Yeah.
Places. No.
To be fair, like if Jesse was the one that died, like kicked off the revenge tour, like
It's like, why are you leaving Jackson for this? Like, that's what I would.
Who's this guy?
yeah.
Just a
for
really
sure.
nice dude.
Jesse was a solid dude, man. Like,
Man, he died quick.
oh yeah, he didn't feel anything.
That's another. It's like I don't know.
When he died, I was like, no.
Yeah, I was sad he died too, but it's like
Like,
that's such a lame way to solve like the character problem they were having.
You hear a little scuffle, you're like, oh, what's going on, Tommy? Run, and just blam.
Pop.
Didn't the same thing kind of happen with was his name
Manny.
Jose? Oh, Manny. Manny.
F it, let's go rip. Oh, you did, Manny.
I was starting to like Manny too. I was like,
Really?
What? Manny was a tool.
Manny was the
I
worst.
thought Manny was
me
funny,
and
man.
me and
Like,
Dave hated Manny.
Oh,
I don't
really?
like Manny. I didn't like Owen.
Owen was annoying.
Mel
was
was
annoying.
the worst.
Holy cow.
Mel, how are
Will
you?
hates pregnant women.
Oh my gosh! No, she was
Spit
pregnant
anything against
on
Will.
the front lines at like 7 months
That
pregnant.
made
8
no
months
sense.
pregnant.
That
No
made
sense. Bad character decision.
Everybody
bad
does
character
their
writing.
part, man. Everybody does their part.
That's so stupid.
Wolf
That's so
up, brother.
stupid.
Her
Wolf
part
up.
should have been to stay home and
actually have
add to the population.
exactly. That's like.
So women are just baby makers, Will. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
she's 8 months pregnant. You don't risk your life. Like, I feel like that's common sense at this point.
Dude, yeah, when you kill her, like, dude, like you stab her in the neck, and you're like, oh,
And then you
this-
find out.
like Owen's like pregnant. He's like, no. Which I mean, like Mel, like step one, like when Ellie comes in the gun, like you should be taking your heavy coat off and be like, hey, I have a baby,
Yeah.
please
Yeah.
don't kill me.
Yeah,
Like,
she just happened to be wearing this heavy coat.
yeah, like I feel like I would have like as soon as the gun's out, like I feel like that's the card you play.
Yeah.
Like, I got a kid. Like,
Oh yeah,
please
that's
don't
the
kill it.
smart thing. Is
Yeah.
like, and Owen's like, I'm the dad. Like,
yeah.
like
Instead, Owen's
literally
like,
play the pity card.
instead,
Owen's
Owen's like, I'm gonna try to overpower.
and it's like that makes no sense.
And then after he
in
gets
that
shot,
point.
like Mel's like, I'm gonna try to overpower her.
No sense. Makes no sense.
After the dog was like, I'm gonna try to overpower her.
That makes sense.
Ellie's like, stupid dog.
Anyway,
I'm like, I played fetch with that doggy.
What a roller coaster of a game.
yeah. Overall, play the game.
So you guys still going with like you low 7, you 6.5?
Yeah, I'll probably.
Basically, yeah.
It's a 10.
Honestly, the only issue I have with the game is those character choices. With
And the whole second half because you have to play as Abby.
yeah, it just that's where it started falling apart for me. There are a lot of things that I love about this game. Pretty much everything else I love.
So you were on board the first half of the game, like just completely on
Right.
board.
I mean, it sucked watching Joel die that early,
yeah,
but I was like, okay, Ellie, let's kill them all.
Get her done.
Yeah, let's do this. And then
it's interesting because I think there are Dave, I'm not sure which category you fall into, but there are kind of, from my experience of looking at people's opinions online, there's 3 types of people. There's people that that have issues with the story the whole way through, like me. There's people that have issues with the second half of the game, like Michael, and there's people who have no issues with the game, and that's
like Landon.
So I don't know
Yes,
where
I'm
you
not.
fall, Dave. Probably, maybe neither of them. But that's the most predominant 3 different positions that I have seen.
So where do you fall under, Dave?
I mean, I have issues with. I thought I laid those out. The issues that I had with the.
But I mean,
with
which
the story.
one of those?
The one that said that that has some issues with the game.
Yours are more not like per se what the characters did. It was more that you like. It was not that like you thought the story beats were stupid. It was that like you just like you wouldn't have made the choice as the character, so it was a disconnect, right?
Yeah, and it made
How's that
me.
different though from the character's choices being stupid?
Well, like he was saying, if it would have been a TV show, so like you tune into season 2 of HBO's The Last of Us and you watch it, like would you have less of a problem if it was on film?
Oh yeah, I would have much less of a problem because it's passive. I'm not like I play a game to be something, like, you know, I'm playing a character, I'm experiencing something else, but in that I'm like, I want to make decisions. That's why you play a game. You don't play a game to be 100% passive. I mean, at least I don't.
I don't
it just
agree
depends
with
on what type of game you play. Because I mean, do you have that issue then with the Uncharted games? Because you don't choose anything.
The Uncharted games are lighter. And that's one thing I was saying is that like,
But there's still decisions being made that, like in Uncharted 4.
Yeah, and
Drake
I have very little issues
Nate
with the decisions made.
Nate leaves Elena and basically abandons her for his brother.
I think it all depends upon the expectations. It all depends upon expectations and what you want from the game. So Dave really likes RPGs, and not only that, but being able to make decisions in those and having like a choice over the story because Dave associates so strongly with the character. And to have the game force, like, am I correct in that, Dave?
Yeah, and I don't really respect the medium enough when it comes to story. And this game didn't make me appreciate it more. It kind of just confirmed how I feel about stories in most video games. So
okay.
So you just hate video games?
No, I love video games, but the thing that I like about video games is being able to make decisions and make choices. And this game made decisions for me that I didn't like, that I wouldn't
Not
have
just
made.
choices though, but deep
choices.
Deep choices.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you need to specify that then. Because if you're going to have that problem with that game with choices, you have to have that problem with any game with choices that you don't make.
Well,
I do.
But he clarified.
I do.
Like, it's like he's not going to complain about Link going to save Zelda or something like that. He's not going to complain about such a lighthearted story.
I know that, but I just want to clarify that you are talking about deep and meaningful choices.
Yeah, because the more impactful the decision, the more it impacts you. If it's not that heavy as a decision, it doesn't really affect you that much.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would like. I guess it depends on the game. So like, if I play a game like I played The Outer Worlds, and you can make a lot of story decisions in that game. You have a lot of player agency, but the overall story is not very cinematic. It's not very. I guess you don't really care as much.
Mm-hmm.
You're just some avatar. You're some unscripted character that doesn't really have any. I would have been with like when I play a game. So like Uncharted 4, you get a couple different scenes where you have dialogue options.
Right,
and it doesn't have any impact on the story.
It doesn't change.
But
I
don't even really. I'm like, I could have gone without this.
I could, yeah.
Like I'm like, when I play a game like that, like I guess I don't have a problem with the player disconnect thing too much. I'm like, I'm just kind of down to experience the story. Like, tell me the story you want to tell me. I'll feel like the character when I'm playing the game, but then when outside of that, I'm like, this is the character. I'm experiencing this character. It's not me. I almost like having a scripted character over having a blank avatar. Like when you play Skyrim, I'm like,
it feels like you're just playing nobody.
Yeah, you're like, I'm playing me, but like I don't have any investment in what's going on here. Like
I would much rather play a Nathan Drake.
Yeah, or even in an RPG like Geralt. He's a written character. You have some choice in that. You have some agency.
Yeah, see, and that's actually an example I was going to give. And I know I keep bringing this up, but Divinity Original Sin 2 also does that as well.
That game story is garbage.
15 minutes. You played 15 minutes of the game. You cannot say, imagine if I played 15 minutes of The Last of Us 2 and said the story was garbage. You know how mad
the whole game you
would be? Yeah, that's fine because I played the whole entire game.
I played all of Divinity Original Sin 2. I didn't like that game. I thought the game.
You've played 15 minutes.
For me, that game's immersion breaking because like you spend 8 hours fighting like one like wood chest thing. Like
I just hate that.
Landon's just stupid and doesn't know how to play the game. That's really the gist of it. Because if he took 8 hours to fight a chest,
running around doing like lunatic crap.
My best friend of 16 years.
Hey, when are you gonna give up on that?
Yeah, when are you gonna like start with a new team?
The more I say it, the more it makes it true, right?
Yeah, that's how it works, Will.
Yeah.
Last of Us, a masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece, baby. It's a 10 out of 10. I'm sticking with a 10 out of 10 because like I said, like few games.
What other game? Is there any other game that's a 10 out of 10?
Red Dead Redemption 2.
I would agree with that.
Last of Us Part 1.
I wouldn't give it a 10 though, but I would say like I understand.
I would say Witcher 3 is a 10, and I'm not saying 10's perfect. I'm saying like
it's an IGN 10.
Yeah, an IGN 10. Like
no, those are a little loose. Like games that are 8s or 7.5 sometimes get IGN 10s. So
yeah. So for my personal score, like when I give it 10, I'm like, this is what I consider to be a must-play game.
Mm-hmm.
Like with that impacted me outside of the time I was playing it. Like The Witcher 3 was like, man, I was thinking about that, for weeks after I beat it. Or like Red Dead Redemption 2, like I still think about it. I guess games that transcend, in my opinion, the media. Like so those I would say probably trying to think of a couple other. BioShock, I would probably give a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Probably BioShock Infinite.
And see, BioShock, the story, when you think about choices you can make, the story does something very interesting with that and affects how you perceive the decisions you made in that game.
That is one of the
That's
best.
one reason I really like that story. And I think that's something that you couldn't have done in a TV show. It had to be a video game. And so that's where like the medium serviced the story. And I don't think the medium of video games serviced the story of The Last of Us 2.
I
think the first game did a much better job of that.
I think the first season of the show or the game, the first game. I think the first game will be much easier to adapt to television than the second game, though.
It's also just a much more linear story.
Yeah.
It's literally a point A to point B story.
Yeah,
it's a road film.
Yeah,
right.
Road trip.
Dibs on music.
Hey, look, her friends. What are the two guys they meet? The brothers.
Oh no.
Sam and
no.
That scene's so messed up. Like,
that was a bummer.
Rip. Yeah, you're like, well, guess it's just gonna be a 2-person trip now. Like, thought maybe we could have 4 of us for a little bit. He's all sad. He's like, oh man.
This is just devolving into incoherent gibberish right now.
Dude, like
all this
I was
podcast
playing the first game with my little sister, and that seemed like my dad like walks in the room, like he just like shoots himself in the head, and I'm like, hey dad,
Hey,
what's up? He's like, man, that's intense, dude.
Landon, can I talk to you for a minute? Do you think you could like keep some of the stuff away from your younger sister? Like give it a couple years before?
I had to be like, I'm like, yeah. I told my little sister, I'm like, yeah, you can't watch me play this one. I'm like, the first one was borderline. I'm like, this one's way darker. I'm like,
was it because of all the lesbian scenes or what?
What about Owen and Abby?
Gosh,
Owen.
That's disgusting. I will say I'm way more of a fan. And you guys are going to be surprised to hear this from me because y'all think I'm a gross person. But I know I'm a gross person.
Yeah, we know you're.
For the most part, I feel like, especially in games, like being implied stuff is way more effective, especially with like sexual things. Like, for example, like earlier in the game, like there's a love scene between Ellie and Dina and the camera just kind of fades out. Like they're making out and the camera fades out. And then like you have the scene with Abby and Owen. And it's like, no, we're not fading out. We're not fading out. Okay.
It was,
all right. We're really going for it. Okay.
It was a journey. I was like, like I was like actively like,
Will's like,
things
what's
went downhill
happening?
so fast. Oh gosh.
Mom, what's going on?
Wait.
I don't get it.
Oh my gosh, Landon.
They're fighting.
Just wrestling real quick.
Real quick?
Yeah, probably pretty quick. That one's a chump.
Okay, all right.
Freaking hate Owen.
I'm not gonna take Mel with me. You should come with though.
Oh my gosh.
He gets shot though. So
It'll all work out. It'll all work out. I
I'm
promise.
tired of fighting for land I don't care about. Well, good thing, Owen. I have good news for you. You're not gonna be fighting for anything soon. What are you guys' expectations for the TV show they're gonna make? Are you guys excited for it?
Yeah, definitely.
I guess so.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, if it's HBO, they have kind of a benchmark of what is quality when it comes to their miniseries. So I have high expectations.
They got Neil Druckmann involved, and then they got the guy from Chernobyl is in on the project as well, I believe.
I think that's a key thing, is to have the creators of the thing involved.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the first season of Walking Dead was probably the best out of all the seasons, is because they had the actual creators there.
Yeah.
Is that Robert Kirkman?
Kirkman, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a pretty young guy.
How old is he?
I want to say he's probably like mid-30s.
Whoa, really?
I'll look it up right now because like I seen pictures of him and he's not that old looking. Like, bear with me.
In other news, did you hear that the Uncharted movie's officially filming now?
Oh, it is?
Yep.
When is that
Still
supposed to be
not-
released?
Who knows? Who knows at this point?
It's gonna be garbage. I don't have high.
I don't.
hopes for it.
I don't really know what they're trying to do with it.
I don't want
'cause
Tom
Tom
Holland.
Holland
He's
is
not Nathan Drake.
Nathan Drake
a
for
bad
some
casting.
reason.
Like,
Robert
Nolan
Kirkman
North-
he's currly 41 years old.
Okay.
Which so I mean the
That's-
comic.
that's
I mean, he was
young,
pretty
yeah.
young when he was
He
writing.
must have been in his early 20s then.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like a failure. Yeah. So I love the Uncharted games, and I don't really know what they're doing with that movie. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't
well.
know.
What happens.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have rather had someone else play him. Like,
They should have had
Chris Pine.
I mean, I would have taken him over
yeah,
Tom Holland. Not that I
Spider-Man?
don't like Tom Holland. It's just
he's not Nathan.
I
Drake.
just have a hard time imagining him as Drake. I mean, he's an actor, so he could do whatever. But I mean, just the way that he's established is, I would have a hard time seeing that. But I mean, years ago when there was a Uncharted movie in the pipeline, there was, they were throwing around what's his name, Dave?
Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion.
Well, because he was in the fan
He
film.
was in the fan film, which was great. Like,
Yeah, he looks just like him. He actually.
Oh yeah.
and Stephen Lang was the
Stephen Lang was Sully,
Sully.
which was really good. Yeah, I mean, I think they missed their window on that.
Yeah, he's Nathan Fillion's a little old.
Yeah,
Unless he plays like Uncharted 4.
even then, like, I feel like Nathan Drake doesn't age at all, because he's like
It's better. The graphics get
he like
better.
yeah he's like, I mean, he looks kind of the same age throughout all the games, and then there's like probably a 10 or 12 year jump at the end of the fourth game, and he looks the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at one point Mark Wahlberg was
Oh my
on as Nathan
gosh.
Drake, and
Just him
I
with
would
like
rather have
his
Tom
Boston
Holland.
accent, like
yeah, he's Sully.
go find some treasure.
Do that. Oh, he's so terrible.
No, I don't want to kill you.
We're going to Siberia.
I have way more faith in the HBO Last of Us show than the Sony Pictures like Uncharted movie.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, video game movies do not have a good track record,
Yeah.
Well,
And it's
hopefully something
unfortunate
will
because-
break that cycle.
because there's a lot of
Sonic 2.
Well, the only video game movies that have been successful, even recently, are
Tomb Raider.
kids movies.
Yeah.
Tomb Raider movies have been, at least financially. I don't know about the last one so much, but like the Angelina Jolie ones.
Yeah.
The Warcraft movie was okay. It was not great, but it wasn't terrible.
The what one?
The Warcraft movie.
World of
Oh,
Warcraft.
gosh.
But we really need one
No,
to be.
it was just Warcraft.
Like, there needs to be one that's exceptional. I feel like to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, there does. Well, here's the thing. Like, and I think about this a lot, actually, is a lot of great stories that are adapted into movies come from comics and graphic novels. And we think of things like, and I'm not talking about the big Marvel movies or the big DC movies. I'm talking about kind of some of the more smaller things like that are adapted into these great pieces that we like enjoy. And
even like a movie, for example, No Country for Old Men. That was a book, and that won Best Picture, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that someday IP, franchises that started out as video games eventually will get there where we can have a great adaptation, a film adaptation of something that started out as a video game. And I think eventually we will get there. But it could be, sometime in this decade. It might be the next one or down the line. Like we'll see.
It's taking forever.
I think The Last of Us could be for at least for television. I think that could be.
Well, maybe that's the key is doing short series instead of movies. Because I mean, like The Witcher.
Movies, you have to cram so much, especially like think about a 30, 40, 50-hour game, right? So in order to turn that into a movie, like a complicated plot, you're going to have to cram that into a 2-hour streamlined experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say that there are certain video games that I think would complement a movie formula better. Like
Tetris.
Uncharted games, I think would make great movies because they're action adventure games.
Because they are movies, basically. Just
they really are. I mean, look at Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Like it's basically Indiana Jones. You know, it's just it depends on how you do it, and for some reason, it's just
they can't figure it out.
A lot of times it just can't. I mean, the last Tomb Raider movie was okay. It wasn't terrible.
It looked okay.
It was okay. But for some reason, it's just I don't know why they can't really just nail a video game movie. It's disappointing because there's a lot of video games out there that would be cool to see in movie form. But
Divinity Original Sin 2.
Imagine
that would not be.
I know that. Yeah. It's my turn to hit you. Okay. Now you hit me and I'll do nothing.
Ooh, I'll cast my spell. But I didn't quite put on the right exact
You don't
time.
have to get turn-based combat into a movie. Like
yes, you do.
Yeah.
Landon hating Divinity, he never does that.
Game's bad.
It will happen eventually. There will eventually be good video game adaptations into film, and I think once it starts, it will keep going. I think it just kind of there needs to be a stride to get there. But we just don't know when that'll be.
Taking a long time.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I mean, you just think all the way back to like the Mario movie.
Gosh,
that was a great movie.
And
I don't know.
Well, you have to adapt the right things. Like, who sees Mario and thinks, yeah, let's make him like it was all marketing. It's because Mario was really the most successful video game at the time. So of course we have to make yes, it was successful as a video game, but it's not going to translate well to a movie. It doesn't service that.
No story in the game.
You need something that has lore or something that has a good plot.
Compelling character.
Right, like an Uncharted.
Like Uncharted or Warcraft or something else.
Or Warcraft. Or even some form of like Red Dead. I mean there's a ton of westerns out there that work.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is kind of like a video game TV show. Like it's
it's like you're playing through
it feels like.
But what I'm saying is there are western movies out there that the Red Dead 2 it's a western story.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of western movies that work and that are successful.
Oh yeah.
So it's like just do that.
Yeah. I know what would you guys let's say Naughty Dog doesn't make The Last of Us Part 3 for their next game. What would you guys like to see?
Jak and Daxter 5.
Either something brand new, like just new IP or whatever, or honestly like a Jak game, something that they haven't made in a while. That'd be kind of cool. I go back and forth with a next Uncharted game. I don't know if they'll do it at least for a while.
I believe from what I've heard, there's another studio making an Uncharted game right now. From what I've heard, there's a new studio they opened.
You play as the daughter or something, or is it like a prequel?
So. I can't remember. It's a new studio that's been made, and I'm pretty sure they're working on it currently.
No.
So
that doesn't sound good.
Yeah. I want something completely original, science fiction or something.
To me,
like
if they did another Uncharted game, I think what would be cool if they did kind of a like Liam Neeson Taken type of thing, where like you could start out playing as the daughter, and then something happens where Nate needs to come rescue her, and then you start playing as Nate again. I think that'd be cool. Because there has to be
they kill Nathan Drake, and then he plays his daughter.
First 2 hours,
but then you switch to the person who killed Nathan Drake.
No.
But there has to be some type of story reason to get Nathan back into the game. You know what I mean? Literally.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably just something brand new.
I think I'm with Will, like sci-fi, or I was saying in the chat, I'd like to like maybe like a Cold War spy thriller. I don't know.
That'd be interesting.
I feel like you could mix the tones of Uncharted and Last of Us, like have more set pieces, but have.
It would be cool to do like a period piece. Like
there does need to be a good Cold War video game. Do you guys remember? Is it Agent? Rockstar was going to make Agent.
Yeah.
That they never followed up on. That was like a Cold War spy game made by Rockstar. But they announced it was like in 2009 or 2010 or something, and it fell to the wayside or something, and there's been no news of it since then. And I guess it's probably either in development hell or has been canceled long ago. But I think if I think Naughty Dog could do a cool Cold War kind of espionage sort of.
Think of the cool
game.
set pieces,
Mhm.
like, but then still have. I would still want to have a little bit darker tone, but like like a serious spy thriller, like backstabbing, betrayal, like stealth. They could get more stealth mechanics from the Last of Us Part 2 in there.
It would be
frustrating
nice
gun
to see
controls.
A good contrast between all the Last of Us games and even somewhat the Uncharted games, but to go to like a more like Jack and Daxter type of world. Or game. It'd just be kind of nice to see that.
Yeah.
And see it done well by a really good studio.
I think we're all excited for whatever they make next. I think we'll all probably get.
Yeah.
Naughty Dog's a pretty good studio.
Yeah, I would say
good.
they're
Pretty good.
They were like one of the.
They're a 10 out of 10, baby. It's
oh
a
my gosh. They're one of those top ones where it's like, okay, like they make it, I'm gonna probably play it and be really excited for it. Like,
yeah,
like it's just how that goes.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else?
Fan casting for the TV show. Fan casting. Come on.
Do we have this conversation every week now, Landon?
Yes.
At least.
Have I already gone through it?
Yes.
I think I've already done that. All right, yeah. I just can't. I just want to like my cast. I just want my cast in the show. Like, give me a call, HBO. Hit me up.
Ben Foster as Tommy.
No, I've changed. I want Josh. I want Josh Holloway as Tommy now.
Oh, okay.
That's what I want now. Switched.
Idris Elba
as
Joel.
And Danny DeVito as Abby. Can you just imagine Danny DeVito swinging a golf club like on Hugh Jackman, like on the ground? Gosh. Danny DeVito walks in like into the theater. You killed my friend. Like it's like Dennis and Dee are arguing like in the like oh, Charlie walks in like point on the map.
That would be terrible.
I'm just gonna erase that from my brain.
It's always sunny in Seattle.
I'm gonna erase that from my brain.
Anyway, I think we're good here. Dave, you good?
10 out of 10.
Cool.
Just keep that in mind. Yeah, but it's a 10 out of 10. It's a mess.
Okay, so Landon's 10 out of 10. Will, you're
6.5.
6.5. I'm like a low 7. Dave?
I was like 7.58, something around there.
Cool. All right.
So you three like the first game more?
Oh,
yeah,
way more.
Yeah. By far. Yep.
Story-wise, yes. Gameplay is better in the second.
Yep. I would agree.
I liked about equal. Gameplay definitely better in the second one.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he'd be out of your. I'd like to see someone argue that the gameplay.
Yeah.
This one's better.
Yeah.
The ladder mechanics.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back next week with probably a regular episode.
Warcraft movie spoiler cast?
What?
No, please.
No.
Warcraft movie spoiler cast?
Warcraft? Oh, gosh.
No.
Hereditary. We'll watch Hereditary.
No.
No,
I've
I'm
already,
good.
I've already seen that movie.
Have you seen Hereditary?
Oh, Hereditary. I totally thought you were talking about Parasite.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I've not seen
I love Parasite.
Hereditary, and I will probably not ever see it.
Spooky.
I'm a scaredy cat. Okay, well, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Hotkeys podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, CastBox, YouTube, and other podcasting platforms. Visit our website, www.hotkeyspodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at Hotkeys Podcast and join our Facebook group at facebook.com/HKHotkeys. Please like and review us and subscribe to the show on whichever platforms you use. Finally, you can contact us via email at hosts@hotkeyspodcast.com.